Okay, President Proctor, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the San Mateo-Foster City School District Board of Trustees meeting. Tonight is June 23rd, 2022, and I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:33 p.m. We are going to go right into 2.1, which is the flag salute. Please stand and join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we will go to roll call. Trustee Watkins. Here. Trustee Corzo.
Present.
Trustee Chin.
Here.
And I am also here. Item 2.3 is the approval of agenda for tonight's meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second. Oh,
Okay, thank you, Trustee Chin, for the motion, and I'll say Trustee Watkins for the second. And all in favor, please unmute and say aye.
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 Thank you. And Trustee Corzo, before we go on, would you mind doing the translation announcement, please?
Bienvenidos. Si ocupan traducción, por favor, hagan clic en su pantalla y pueden hacer clic en el icono del mundo y ahí pueden cambiar la idioma. También pueden levantar la mano para la traducción. Gracias.
Thank you very much. We will now go to item 3.1, public statements related to non-agenda topics. The San Mateo-Foster City School Board cannot act upon any matter that has not been included and publicly posted on the agenda, except under limited circumstances as permitted by law. The board may refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and/or action where appropriate. Please limit your statements to 3 minutes. Hold on 1 second. So we have several people in the audience. Anybody would like to make a public comment on item 3.1? Okay, Peter, can we please check with everyone on Zoom?
If there's any members of our Zoom audience that would like to make public comment on anything not covered on the agenda this evening, please use the raise your hand functionality within Zoom now. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board. Okay, President Proctor, we have no hands for public comment.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to let everyone know how many people there are here. Hold on. So we have about, I'd say 10 people in the audience here, and we have 28 people on Zoom. We will now go to item 3.2, which is public statements related to agenda items. Persons will be called on at the appropriate time. So we will move on to item 3.3, which is the foundations and committee reports. Anyone have it?
President Proctor, I'll be promoting Annie Tsai from the Ed Foundation.
Yeah, we can do that first. So we'll do the Ed Foundation first. Can you guys hear? Oh, okay, that's probably.
Thank you, trustees. Is now the time? Yep.
Hold on 1 second, Annie. We're just getting the volume up. Okay, now you can go.
All right, perfect. Thank you, trustees, for the time this evening and for your collaboration over this last year. It's been a really wonderful year. We are thrilled this evening to be presenting a check to the San Mateo-Foster City School District, which Sandra will go into the details for, but I apologize, I can't be there. I have a cold and don't want to expose anyone. But it's been a pleasure working with the district and our partners, the community members. We really have had a great time just thinking about what's possible and what the vision for the future looks like. And so it's just been a real pleasure to work with everybody here. Also want to quickly say that next year's we're going to be continuing our aggressive fundraising goals. And so we certainly appreciate the community every year stepping up and contributing to the foundation so we can support really important programs like STEM and visual and performing arts and things like that. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Sandra.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Sonia Tappan, and I have the honor of being the Executive Director of the San Mateo-Foster City Education Foundation. We believe that every child deserves the best education possible, and we need you to make that possible. In honor of, I have the honor of presenting the check from the San Mateo-Foster City Education Foundation to the San Mateo-Foster City School District. But first, I would like to take a moment to pause and thank everyone who made this check possible. I want to thank every child that read and logged in their minutes and every person who donated to the readathon. I want to thank everyone who purchased Warrior tickets through our website. I want to thank all the athletes, musicians, artists who participated in our programs and the educators who taught them to be their personal best. We want to thank everyone who attended and donated to the Moonlight Masquerade Gala. We want to thank our partner sponsors who allow our students to dream big with their generous grants and donations. We want to thank everyone who donated to the annual campaign at any level. But last but not least, we want to thank everyone for sending their kids to the San Mateo-Foster City School District because we believe that they make our schools amazing. Giving to the Ed Foundation at any level sends the message that you care about our schools. Schools are free, but great schools need community involvement. Thank you, and I look forward to you joining us soon. Please share your gifts and volunteer. You make us great. And now I have the pleasure of presenting the check for the 2021-2022 school year fundraising of the San Mateo-Foster City School District. And we will do that together.
There we go. Yeah, somebody can do that. Perfect. Thank you, Ken. Sandra, can you?
Really close. So for the record, I want to thank everyone for their very generous support of $1.02 million this year.
You know what, that's the most in how many years?
It's most ever.
No, 1.3 million 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
But
So that was like 500,000.
that was an amazing, yeah, that was an average pay.
Yes.
100,000.
It was
So
just the amount, yeah. So.
one day,
So much.
yeah.
Thank you.
Hopefully you all got to see the check. It was 1,092,000, which is amazing. Thank you. Yay. Any other reports?
I think it's hard to follow that. I don't know if we want to lower that now. It's going to be echo. Sorry. So last Friday, I think Trustee Corzo and I, we sit, you're delegate, right? And I'm a area representative, area 3 or area 2 for the San Mateo County School Board Association. And so just as an update, it was a retreat that was meant to plan out the year for the entire county for the San Mateo County trustees. And so there were lots of topics talked about, and just look forward for future invites and meetings related to various things that relate to our county and school boards. So.
I'm just trying to think of like what else I can add to that, but I think you pretty much summed it up. Yeah, it was a good showing. It was hybrid. That's something different that we're doing with those meetings, is making sure that they're hybrid, so they're more inclusive for folks that are maybe like on the co-side or just, you know, don't have childcare, et cetera. Greg Land, our trustee from the San Mateo Union High School District, is our president now. And so one thing that we can look forward to from the San Mateo County School Boards Association is a survey to all board trustees in our county. Apparently it's been something that they've wanted to do for many years and have like gotten like halfway there to making it, to executing it, and then it just it hasn't fully been sent out and whatnot. So we're going to get that done this year, and the goal is to really make sure that the education and the meetings that we have as a county board are really in line with what the needs are in our county. And also equity is going to be a big focus. We are hoping to bring back the equity network. So more to report out when we have more info, but it was a great start to organizing the topics and meetings for that group.
Okay, this is not exactly a committee, but I will report out that we all attended the San Mateo-Foster City School District Partnership Luncheon on Friday, I guess it was. And so the Ed Foundation, who we just heard from and just saw, they were our nonprofit of the year. So congratulations to you guys, and thank you again for everything you do for our school district and for our students. And you know, I just look forward to all of the various events that you guys put on, including the gala that's coming up and the readathon. And we also honored some of our other partners throughout the county that help our schools and our students. And so just, I thought it was a great event, and it was nice to see everybody in person. And actually it was at CSM, so it wasn't at one of the schools. It was just nice to like be in a different place and feel special for a few hours. And we got to see some performances by some students that I think it was the Burrell, is it the Burrell Strings? Chamber?
Chamber.
It was chamber orchestra, and then students that did some dances, and it was just really nice to see everybody, and a great event. So I'm looking forward to that next year. Hopefully it's an annual thing. Okay, so we can go on to item 3.4, which is SMETA CSEA SMEA updates. Anyone here?
I do not see our normal representatives from SMEA and SMETA and CSEA. I'm not sure if they're in the audience, but we do have Jess Noddy coming from SMEA. She'll be in a moment.
And I do want to point out, Peter, it is summertime, so that's okay.
But we're still doing board meetings.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to, my name is Jessica Noddy. I am the principal of Burrell. And it was great to hear the Ed Foundation and that you got to hear Burrell Chamber play. That's awesome. I wanted to share a couple highlights from Burrell this year and thank everyone for support. We have awesome families, staff, in the district office. So some highlights this year that I wanted to share is that we got to use our new gym and classrooms. And at the end of the year, we had a beautiful 8th grade awards and scholarship night in our new gym. Our 6th graders got to go to outdoor education. Our music program, we had 2 sets of concerts in the winter and in the spring. Our amazing Burrell drama had 13, the musical. Our cultural fair was back, which is a great community event with an awesome assembly. We have AVID classes, and they got to go to college and experience what Santa Clara was like for the day. And our PTA leadership brought new events like an online auction. I got to have a principal for a day, a student with me, which was super fun. and a volunteer appreciation dinner to celebrate all the people, all the parents that help. We had fun. We finished strong and had field trips at the end of the year and promotion. Special thanks to Trustee Kenshin and Noelia Corzo and Diego Ochoa for being there on stage at SAMPAC to celebrate our graduates. And I just wanted to say thanks to our great community and to the district for support and collaboration. And on behalf of SMEA, I wanted to wish everyone a fun and safe summer that includes some reading and math practice. And we look forward to continuing the work later this summer in preparation for the fall. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Have a great summer as well.
Thank you.
Okay, we can go on to item 3.5 announcements. Okay, there are no announcements, so we will go on to item 3.6, superintendent report.
First, big thanks to our wonderful coordinator of communications, Diego Perez. He was instrumental in putting on the event that we held last week, where we basically brought together 25 partner organizations and gave them awards and certificates and thanked them. We also had the mayor of Foster City and a council member. We also had council member Amo Lee from the city of San Mateo. We also had representatives from the County Office of Education in attendance. So it was just a real wonderful celebration of people who help us. And it could not have happened without Diego Perez's excellent work, and also Tatiana Sandoval and her wonderful support for the event. So I wanted to just publicly call them out. I also wanted to recognize our nonprofit of the year, which is the San Mateo Foster City Education Foundation. I can't tell if Sandra's still in attendance, but this person deserves a whole lot of credit. She is a huge asset to this community as the executive director. I'm really, really proud to work with her. I'm honored to have the opportunity to be in meetings with her. And the work that she does on behalf of this district is essential. So I want to give her a big thanks and echo her comments that the fundraising requires all of our support. Kids have to read for that readathon. People have to show up to that Moonlight Masquerade. People need to get involved in the many, many events that we have. And we're already, as Trustee Watkins knows, we're already knee deep in planning for the upcoming year's event that we're sending out communications to everybody about. And I think it's just a wonderful part of being in this district to have so much community and family support. And those are my comments for this evening.
Thank you. We will now go to the proposed consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered by the board to be routine and will be enacted by the board in one motion in the form listed below. There will be no discussion on these items prior to the time the board votes on the motion unless members of the board, staff, or public request specific items be removed and discussed from the consent agenda. The superintendent and staff recommend approval of all consent items. Movement of any recommended consent items is appropriate. Are there any members of the board that would like to pull an item? Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone in the audience here that would like to pull the items from the consent agenda? Okay, Peter, can we please go to?
Yes, if there's any members of the Zoom audience that would like to pull an agenda item for public comment on the consent, please use the raise your hand functionality in Zoom now. I'll ask you what specific item you would like to make public comment on, and then you'll have 3 minutes with the board. We have one hand, Marcella. Marcella, what item would you like to pull under the consent agenda for public comment?
4.1.1 and 4.2.11.
Okay. All right, President Proctor.
Okay, thank you very much. Would anybody like to make a motion on the consent agenda minus those 2 items?
Motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 411 and 4211.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Watkins for the motion and Trustee Corzo for a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that was 4 yeses. So we can now go to item 4.1.1. Superintendent Ochoa, do you have anything on 4.1.1 that you can share?
I would pass it over to Assistant Superintendent Chambliss, and he might be able to talk just a little bit more about this item.
Sure. Good evening, Board of Trustees and Superintendent. This is the annual step where we bring to the board the planned instructional minutes for each of our schools. This year, we are bringing the elementary instructional minutes to you tonight, and then in our first meeting of the new year, we'll come back with the instructional minutes for our middle schools. Let me just pause there and allow you to pose any questions that may be raised about that.
Okay, thank you, David. Are there any clarifying questions from the board on this item?
Sorry, just a quick clarifying question. It appears that we do have a bullet point where grades 4 through 8 are listed. So it's 54,000 minutes. Are you saying there's another middle school item coming back next time? Or?
Director Chin, I'm sorry, I had a little bit of sound trouble there. I missed the first part of your question. You're saying that there is, please ask your question again for me.
I'm sorry, you stated that the middle school minutes would be coming back next time, but it appears that on this, but on the item tonight, there is a bullet point that says grades 4 through 8 with 54,000.
Oh, to clarify, sure, thank you. Yeah, that's simply information for the board and certainly for the public regarding SB 813 in terms of what it defines as the minimum number of minutes. Because tonight we're bringing to you grades 4 and 5, it's important that you see that the minimum number of minutes is 54,000. Obviously, we'll be back with 6 to 8 with the same information.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this item? Okay, Peter, can we please go to public comment on this? I know Marcella has pulled this item, but maybe there's some others as well.
Okay. If there are any others that would like to make public comment on this item, please use the raise your hand functionality within Zoom now. And then we'll also go to Marcella. Marcella, go ahead.
Thank you. I had a question and a comment and a request. I was noticing the difference in minutes offered per year per site. And I just questioned what the rationale was, as kind of recognizing that we have one district-wide contract for teacher workload, but each school has significantly different number of minutes offered per year. And I wanted to just highlight one that stood out to me. In kindergarten, there is a discrepancy of 8,550 minutes between our different schools, which means that one of our schools receives 143 more hours instruction in a year, kindergartners do, than another school. It doesn't seem to be related to a rhyme or reason, looking at income, looking at test scores, looking at any of it. There just doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason as to which schools receive more instruction. So my request is, as we think about equity and what that looks like district-wide, I think that instructional minutes and spending per student at each school, kind of thinking about what we're investing in each school would be helpful for the board to keep in mind or to take up, but also for the community to be aware of. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcella. Okay, President Proctor, there are no other hands for public comment on this agenda item.
Thank you. Are there any board comments on this item?
I just want to say I appreciate Marcella for bringing it up. I know it's something I've actually brought up in the past a lot around the discrepancy in instructional minutes, and I do think it's worthy of us discussing. I know that in the past, sites have kind of made those determinations based on schedules and those sorts of things, but I do think there's absolutely value to having standardization there. So would be interested in that conversation and unpacking that a little bit more. So thanks, Marcella, for raising that.
I'll just second that. I agree with Trustee Watkins there, but I'm happy to make the motion on this with the added language of asking Superintendent Ochoa and the staff to come back at a later time to talk about this agenda at another meeting. So that's a motion.
Second, also seconding the request.
Thank you, Trustee Chin for the motion and Trustee Watkins for the second. All in favor, please unmute and say aye.
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 Okay, that item has passed with 4 yeses. And the next item is 4.2.11. Scroll down.
And this is the contract with contract extension with the first student that we're proposing to renew for a year. The existing contract we have with first student has a provision in it that enables us to extend the contract for up to 5 years on an annual basis within that 5-year period of time. So the discussions with first student we had was looking at in conjunction with the contract extended 1 year for the current year. And they do have a proposed increased rate that we're bringing forward for recommended approval tonight. I can share with you the discussions we had around this rate. Did center around some of the contract language because first student absorbs the cost of fuel and sells the vehicles that they provide. And we've seen what those increases in costs are. They also have had challenges staffing in order to recruit and retain people to their organization. They felt that this was a reasonable request in order for them to compete with other organizations. We also had a dialogue too regarding what a multi-year rate plan might look like. So they had proposed rates for a 3-year contract, but so in order to stay in alignment with our existing contract language, we did it on a 1-year basis. But I fully expect they'll honor those subsequent year percentages that they proposed initially. And I believe that when you look at the cumulative increase of those percentage increases, they were likely very close to the property tax growth that we see within our district over that same period of time. Another comment would be that over the past several years, the increases that we've seen to their rates, although the district has seen property tax growth in excess of the rates that their contract increased by, there wasn't a request from them to ask for additional funding. And just as a side note, I just want to recognize and thank the tremendous support that this organization has provided to our students and families during the pandemic. They made heroic efforts. That's independent of the request tonight. But I also just wanted to acknowledge those folks for really their heroic efforts, help with food distribution, anything we asked of this organization to do during that period of time. They really went above and beyond what I could ask for a partner. So maybe next year when we have partner recognition, this may be one of the folks that we recognize because they did tremendous work for us. And this is sometimes I've seen in action, sometimes the first people that our young people interface with when I've been at bus stops, seeing them interact. So during that time, reassuring kids and who hadn't been back to school in a long time, just really tremendous. So thank you to them.
Okay, thank you. Are there any clarifying questions from the board? No. Okay. Peter, can we please go to public comment on this item?
Yeah, if there are any other additional members of the public that would like to make comment on this item, please use the raise your hand functionality within Zoom now. Okay. Marcella, go ahead.
Thank you. Before I start my comment, I just wanted to let you know, I think that the community laptop may still be unmuted because a few of you, when you speak, there's an echo and it's hard to hear. So I think there's something in there that's causing some issues for people on Zoom. But my comment with this particular one was just that for the average citizen or community member, when items are on the consent agenda, I hope that there are things that we can kind of digest ahead of time, and that's why they're put on the consent agenda. This particular one was really hard to understand what the implication of the increase was. So in many areas on the board agenda, financial impact is spelled out, but this particular one only showed the dollar amount increase kind of per service, as opposed to what that overall cost is going to be in the next academic year. And so it made it hard to understand. And I just wanted to make that request or kind of point out that the financial impact is not indicated here the way that it is for many other items that have a budgetary impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcella.
Marcella. Oh, sorry, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, next we have Randy. Randy, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. I appreciate Marcella McClone for her attention to consent agenda items, and I echo her concerns with the busing contract. I also and you know I've noted this sort of kind of lack of I don't want to characterize it as lack, but this need for more detail about financial impact on other items, not specifically with busing. And I'm glad to see that it's not just me. But also, this brings up just kind of the busing in general. You know, it's great to hear, oh, wow, they've been great community partners. But there have been a lot of issues in the past, I believe, with this vendor who's like the busing partner, right? And requests that this board has made about understanding timeliness of busing by this provider. And, you know, in all of it's been several years now, I've not seen any of these reports come back to the board. And I'm just wondering, has there been any follow-up? Has there been any improvement? And, or do they just, do they get a vote of confidence and yay, we get more money? And, all right, $1 million from the Ed Fund goes to the bus provider. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Okay, President Proctor, there are no other hands for public comment.
Thank you. Patrick, are there any further comments you might be able to make to provide some?
So thank you both, Randy and Marcella, for your comments. I appreciate that. And next year, I expect we'll likely be bringing this back again too. So we'll make certain that we, an oversight on my behalf, so I apologize. Be happy to share the specific information to the board, the exact amount, what this represents as an increase between what the CPI amount that would have been likely move forward, and a little bit of an incremental amount. So I want to say just ballpark. I mean, it's $150,000 or less in terms of an overall increase, but I can confirm that exact amount for the board and for the public. So thank you for your comments, and want to make sure we're fully transparent regarding this. In regards, Randy, to your comments too, I would tell you that there has been improvement. We have established weekly Friday meetings with their senior leadership team, and we review these operational issues. So that's something we instituted. They have new team members on board, new management on board, and the concerns that the board had, I shouldn't say the board, that were brought to the board's attention regarding the timeliness of bus arrivals, et cetera. So those have been substantially improved. I don't want to say there's never been an issue at all during the year, but I will tell you with their leadership team, the changes they've made, and the weekly meetings that I have with that team and our team has with that team, that we set aside time to make sure that we're aware of these issues, something we instituted, and it's been consistently adhered to every Friday morning. We meet from 8:30 to 9:30, and then on an intermittent basis whenever it's necessary. So we have not heard those concerns from sites or from parents. And so I think they've really made a really strong effort by bringing in some folks on their team to address those operational issues. And I apologize for not disclosing the actual dollar amount. And that's something we can absolutely follow up with you on at the board and with the community as well too. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the board?
Thanks, Patrick, for that clarification. Since this item has been pulled, I find some value in providing a comment. I'm wondering whether or not, and this is in the big picture, that you mentioned that the high gas prices and some of the increases going towards that, which is understandable. I'm wondering whether or not we have ever looked into, even though that First Student is our vendor, the state of California through the California Air Resource Board provides grants for electric and hybrid buses. Have we ever looked into that? Because it seems like what we could do is probably as a district, apply for that grant money, and I think that they give us, there's 122 million set aside for electric buses, for school buses. And so it seems like we could apply for that and then essentially lease it to First Union if that's possible. I don't know if we've ever looked into anything like that, but
and that's been, so I appreciate, I'm sorry, Kelly, I may have interrupted you, ready?
Go.
Yeah, we've had that exact conversation with First Student regarding some of the vehicles in our fleet to do exactly that. And we've talked about electric vehicles and funding for those vehicles and look at grant opportunities to apply for that funding. So we have 2 vehicles in our fleet that are going to need to be replaced. So we've had that conversation with them. They have talked about how, that they make purchases not just for our community, but on a grander scale, and they're happy to partner with us on that to make that happen.
Great, glad to hear. Thank you for that. And with that, I'm happy to make a motion to approve this item.
Do you mind if I ask one more question? It doesn't change my vote, but I was just curious. In terms of the buses and satisfaction, customer satisfaction, do we do, or does the bus company do any surveys with families? Maybe there's hidden issues that we're not aware of that if asked.
That's a great point, and we have not, so it's something we should look into.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll just add briefly. I know probably a year or 2 ago, it was probably at this point, maybe 2 or 3 years. I feel like it was in person. We did a study session just on transportation. And I think that's how the weekly meetings came about. But so I think there definitely are sometimes, I know there are buses that do multiple routes for multiple schools, and there's a shortage of bus drivers, and that's still the case, Patrick, do you think?
They've had, it's been relatively stable with them a while, yeah. We certainly had that challenge. They were going through, again, prior to some of the changes they made, they had a real challenge. So they made it a real focus of theirs so that we have this consistency. So again, this year, we haven't had that same number of challenges. I think that part of the request too is so they maintain that stability for our families. But a lot of that has really, those issues have not been issues that we've had to wrestle with so much this year. But certainly I was really well aware of those. So
yeah,
their efforts.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask because I know my son will take the bus to his after school program, and he knows the name of his bus driver. She made the ribbon lays for all of the 5th graders. And so there seems, just from my perspective with my own child, right, a really positive relationship. And I know the bus drivers got a shout out at the graduation, and I think Amy, who's my son's bus driver, I think she was there, and so definitely part of the school community. But that doesn't mean that there aren't issues elsewhere. So I'm really glad to hear that there's more stability, and just it's kind of hurting all of our pockets to the increase in gas and inflation. I think it makes a lot of sense to keep our they're also part of like the essential workers in our district, right? Like we need them, our kids need them. So with that, I think there's a motion on the floor. So I'll second.
Thank you, Trustee Chin for the motion and Trustee Corzo for the second. All in favor, please unmute and say aye.
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 Okay. That was 4 yeses. So we will move on to item 5.1 LCFF Local Plan Indicators 2021 to 2022.
Yes, thank you, President Proctor. So each year, as a district, we are required to bring to you for review and then post publicly in the fall through the California dashboard. Progress on indicators, state priorities that aren't typically found in the sort of quantitative reporting that the state provides. So these so-called local plan indicators that you see in the document this evening, we go through those. It informs our LCAP planning. And then we now bring them to you for review in June and then for reporting in the fall on the dashboard. So with that, I'll just pause there and turn it back to you for any questions.
Thank you, David. Are there any clarifying questions from the board? Okay, Peter, can we please go to public comment?
Yes, if there's any members of the public that would like to make comment on this item, please use the raise your hand functionality within Zoom now. Okay, President Proctor, we have no hands for public comment.
Okay, thank you. Are there any board comments? Okay, I was just going to make one quick comment regarding the school climate student survey. And I know we've gone through this before, but just wanted to highlight once again that, you know, as it seems as students kind of move on from elementary school, they seem less connected and feel like adults care less about them and a bit more, I guess, stressed and just have lots of issues going on. So I appreciate all that our school district is doing to kind of address those issues. And I know that part of our strategic plan includes student wellness and social emotional well-being and all that. So it's always good. I like to be reminded of how people are feeling in addition to how they're all doing. So thank you for sharing this information. Any other comments? Okay. So this item was just receiving information, so we can move on. Item 5.2, approval of local control accountability plan 2022-2023.
All right, again, my pleasure to come back to you after the prior meeting where we shared with you our local control accountability plan for 2022-23. We have had another round of feedback and adjustment from the San Mateo County Office of Education. So we're bringing final draft tonight to you for approval. Just a reminder that we've spent a lot of time talking about the strategic plan, which is absolutely at the heart of this LCAP for the coming year. So we've covered a lot of ground on this already, so I will pause there and take any questions.
Thank you, David. Are there any clarifying questions? Okay. Peter, can we please go to public comment?
Yes, if there's any members of the public that would like to make comment on this item, please use the raise your hand functionality within Zoom now. Okay, President Proctor, we have no hands for public comment.
Great, thank you. Are there any board comments on this?
I don't have like a super thorough comment. I think like we have seen many LCAPs, and maybe just for folks that are on who are like, you know, maybe seeing this for the first time, our LCAP is basically like our, like a very, like a budget and a strategic plan that's like super, super thorough and specific. So it's a lot of information, and we have seen it before, so we don't have like a ton to say. That's why, but just wanted to give folks that that info. And then I just wanted to also share that it's then translated into our SIPSAs, which are more site specific. Yeah, I did see something in here about us not getting like a grant that we've gotten in the past. I think it was in the beginning. Let me see. I'll just stop there for now and I'll like find that, but I don't know if anyone else has anything they want to add.
Okay, any other comments while she looks for that? Okay.
Sorry, I found it. It's the so it was the concentration grant add-on funding. So we didn't get that. I feel like we've gotten that in the past, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
I can defer some of this to Patrick, but no, actually that that is an item that it's a additional concentration funding, and we as a district do not receive concentration. It's supplemental funding we receive, but not concentration due to the percentage of unduplicated students we have in our district.
Got it. Okay.
Are there any other comments? If not, this is an item we need to vote on.
I'll make my one comment, which is thank you for all the work that you have put into this. I would definitely echo Trustee Corzo's comments that our lack of comments are not because we don't care. I know that you guys have done a ton of work on this, and we have seen it. So with that, I will make a motion to approve this item.
I'll second. Thank you, Trustee Chin, for the motion, and Trustee Watkins for the second. All in favor, please unmute and say aye.
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 Okay, that passes with 4 yeses. We will go on to item 6.1, approval of student cell phone free environment guidelines and procedures.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and Superintendent Ochoa. This evening, I ask for your consideration and approval a student cell phone guideline and procedure process for our middle school students to be without their cell phones or without the use of their cell phone during the school day. Trustee Proctor, you said it well when you mentioned the wellness of our students. One of the things that we recognize that middle school students and adults alike, I'm sure, their cell phones do provide opportunities for distraction, for interactions with each other in a way that is not really one-on-one or in person. So what we're considering and what we'd like to do is partner with Yonder. Yonder provides pouches for every middle school student that we would purchase. Each student would be given a pouch. That is, they bring their phone to school. When they get to school, they put their cell phone in the pouch. It's a cloth pouch. It's their pouch for the school year. They can decorate it, write their name on it. When they get to school, staff who are going to be trained and are working in partnership with Yonder will magnetize the pouch. The student then carries the pouch with them throughout the school day. At the end of the day, as they leave campus, they will then demagnetize their pouch and have access to their cell phone. So it's really quite that simple. Yonder has partnered with 1,000 school districts plus. I attended just yesterday a webinar meeting with Rochester City Schools that they answered questions and shared their partnership with Yonder to just talk about the practicality and the use of it and the success. And they echoed what Yonder is saying, is that it improves academic performance, social interaction, behavior referrals are diminished. So it's being viewed and received by school districts across the country and in fact around the world as a very current and important thing to do and offer for students, particularly at this age level. And in addition, San Mateo High School District has used Yonder pouches this past school year with much success. So I'm happy to answer questions and I would welcome them.
Thank you, Dennis. Are there any clarifying questions?
Yes, I have a question. So I just wanted to get clarity on, so can you explain like one more time the process
Sure.
of like how they're magnetized and demagnetized? Like, so the students do it themselves or the teachers do it, or there's like a special way to do it?
Great question. So think of the pouch as like an eyeglass case. It's a little bit bigger. It's big enough for your cell phone, or if you have a smartwatch to put in the pouch when you get to school. You walk through a designated area. Yonder's partnering with each school. They've already visited the school sites to talk about locations for the magnets. The magnet piece is permanently attached to the school wall in these locations. The administration and staff each morning would put out the attachment piece to the wall piece that is mounted. Students come into school on campus at these various locations. They put their phone as they're coming into school into the pouch. They walk up to the magnet, is that the right word? The magnet. They clasp it onto there. They just walk by, it clicks it, and then they go on with their day. Same thing as they leave campus. Students that are late would then, of course, go into the office and have them magnetized. If students leave campus early, there's opportunities for them to get their pouch demagnetized. So yeah, it's really quite that simple. I hope, Noelia, that it clarified for you.
Yeah, it does. I think like okay, I'm like question, discussion, question, discussion. I'll make it a question. Is there do teachers or like staff have the ability to demagnetize pouches in case of an emergency?
Absolutely, and they shared, the model schools that are using it shared sort of plans that they have in place where these demagnetized items are located throughout the school. The administration has access to putting the magnetizers back up. There's always one like in the health office, in the main office, various locations throughout the school. One of the things that did come up as a point of conversation and a lot of research around it and findings is that in an emergency situation, schools have found, and I would echo it from my experience this year, what we don't want our students to run to their cell phone, start texting and calling and interfering with the process of safety first. We want students to be paying attention to the adults that are in charge, following the directions and the procedures as put in place. School administrators and staff will be communicating with our director of communications, myself and others, to the community about what is really, the situation at hand. In a situation where for some reason they can't get to a demagnetizer, they're cloth pouches. So they could literally rip open the pouch. It's really it's a deterrent.
Yeah. Thank you. One more question. I saw in the I'm sorry, I'm like contract resolution. Let me pull it up. In the item, I saw this in the agenda item that like if one is lost or damaged, that potentially the family or the student is responsible for replacing that. My concern would be can we be mindful of how we like roll that out when it comes to students that through no fault of their own, right? Like what if like their backpack is stolen or etc. Yeah, I just want us to be mindful of that.
I appreciate that.
Oh wait, this is a discussion piece kind of, right? My bad.
That was, yeah. Do you have a question around that? Could you pose it as a question?
My question is,
How would
Can-
we deal with that?
yes, how, yes.
I think it's a great question. We don't want this to be we don't want finances to be in the way of this item and this really great tool so that students can learn and teachers can teach and we can have middle school environments cell phone free during the day. Students lose them, damage them. We will certainly consider the situation, look at, was their backpack stolen? Was it item that went missing? Was it damaged? They're really, they're about $16 per pouch. I would think that we wouldn't be charging, we haven't determined that yet with the guidelines or the actual parent contract. Typically, it's about $10 a pouch is what we would think, but that's certainly something to consider. So thank you.
I just have a question around, what kind of training and support and all of that looks like for both our students and staff. And if you could just share a little bit more about that.
So the administration has already been trained. They've each met with Yonder representatives to talk through the process. Each Yonder reps have met with the middle school administration to do that. In addition, staff will be receiving a 45-minute training in August. Yonder staff will then come to the school sites for the first few days of school to see about where the best, where do students come in, where are the best places to put the magnetizer applicant. I'm not sure what the word is, but the thing that demagnetizes and magnetizes the Yonder pouch. They're available to assist in any way. They're definitely partners in this work. So there's full training for administration, teachers, staff, community efforts to educate the parents as well and students.
Thank you, Dennis. I have comments, but the one question I have is relating to smart watches. I've seen the honor pouches in use at San Mateo High School, and I do recall we've talked about this, at different site visits and other things. But the inclusion of smart watches, I'm wondering, does Yonder and some of the other schools do that with the watches, or is this sort of just an additional add-on? Because it does seem like it's really meant for cell phones.
Well, the information we've received from Yonder and the partner schools that we've met with, they do include smart watches as they become a tool for distraction with texting students and sharing information, that type of thing. So it is considered, they do consider them, they've used them in that way. If the board feels that's not something that, that they would want included in that, certainly. But I think that my recommendation is we do go forward with smart watches as well.
My question was around the plan for engaging with families and parents. I just have heard a few concerns from parents that are worried, if it's an emergency, I want my kid to have their phone. And so how, what's the plan for getting everyone kind of on board and understanding how this is really important for student achievement and for student, mental health and well-being and all of that?
Well, this is the first start, right? This is our first public comment and informational piece to share with the community and the board around our procedures and guidelines. The next reach would be to send a letter home to families, letting them know our plan, opening, perhaps having an opportunity for community meetings at each school site to answer questions. I think anybody with an older sibling, certainly if they've been at San Mateo High School, can talk about the success and the feel of it. I think in the beginning, for what I've heard from students, it was a shift for students, but then embraced very quickly and accepted and really, I think that they've come to recognize the importance of it. But to your question, I think we will do whatever it takes to get parents to feel confident and comfortable. And I think that's a big part of it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, Peter, can we please go to public comment on this item?
If there are any members of the public that would like to make comment on this item, please use the raise your hand functionality within Zoom now. Okay, we have Marcella, then after Marcella will be Randy. Marcella, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to thank President Proctor for the last comment you just made. I come to this with very, very mixed feelings. And I think it is important to have parent feedback and information from parents, and just kind of, even the question about smartwatches or the question about any of those things would be helpful to have parent feedback as something is being proposed that's going to be a district-wide policy, rather than, my understanding is it's going to get voted on tonight, which means that will be the policy. And so any conversation that happens later, it's done, the decision is made. I know that that's sometimes a challenge. It can kind of feel like there are multiple times that this has happened in the district. It can feel like something, again, was developed without parent input that's going to impact families. And maybe I'm a little sensitive to it because in light of what we've seen in schools in the last few months within our district and around the country. So I do want to state I am in huge favor of a process that minimizes cell phone usage. We see students using them to film fights, to film all sorts of things, and we don't want that in the schools. But I did want to share, as a parent of a child that doesn't even have a cell phone, but recognizing that that child was in that hours-long lockdown with no information. In light of so many things that have happened, there are families that rely on some method of communication. And so I hear that there are some options, but I do want to be specific. I want the discussion to be very specific. So I want to know more about how there can be emergency access in case of future hours-long lockdowns where parents don't know and children don't know. I know that was an exception, and I know that didn't have to do with our district, but as a parent, I don't care. Like, I need to know that my child is safe. I also want to know a little bit more about multiple exit points. So I know that Yonder will be doing some of that, but I really think about, commutes and kids who are running into school right as the bell rings, and how this is going to impact tardiness. And then I just wanted to clarify, just a clarifying question. Trustee Chen asked about smartwatches. I see in the policy that what's listed is smartwatches that connect to cell phones, and there is a difference. And so I'd just like clarification around that. So thank you.
Thank you, Marcella. Next, we have Randy, and then after Randy will be Matthew. Randy, go ahead.
Hi, good evening again. And I have the great pleasure of following the wise Marcella McCollum again. And I appreciate the points that she brought up, especially about the need for varied voices and for parent engagement prior to a vote, prior to implementing this kind of policy. And in my own work, which is equity work, hearing from varied audiences, stakeholders, voices is really valuable. And just, one voice representing myself and my own family, my own experience. I come at the smartwatch approach from the perspective of a middle schooler who has a smartwatch, and the kind that he has connects to a cell phone. The reason he has a cell phone is to power his smartwatch. He is so motivated for physical activity because of the smartwatch. You take his smartwatch from him, that's going to kill a lot of motivation. He really likes to measure his progress. He gets a huge charge out of that. You can't measure his progress. Well, great. This ties into well-being. This ties into healthy kids. This ties into a lot of the other things that you're talking about. Maybe it's just my special snowflake of a kid. I'd like to think not. So there are other things to consider. And I would just suggest that before you make a hasty decision, maybe you consider getting some other viewpoints. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Next, we have Matthew. Matthew, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead, Matthew.
Great. Good evening. My name is Matt Freehoff, and I'm a teacher at Abbott Middle School. First and foremost, I'd like to express many thanks to those who helped craft the cell phone free policy. I can tell that this took a lot of planning. With that being said, I wanted to share some concerns regarding the violations section of the guidelines and procedures document. In a nutshell, I think it's extremely wishy-washy and kind of soft on crime. As all of us in education know, the presence of cell phones on campus is one of the biggest detriments to learning. I don't even need to go into the details regarding social media and bullying. Simply giving a phone back to a kid when the final bell rings is less than a slap on the wrist, and quite frankly, an insult to this whole Yonder Pouch idea. We're investing an incredible amount of time, money, and logistical effort into these pouches. So to me, the logic just doesn't compute if a student can simply skip off after school with phone in hand if it's found out of its pouch. If anyone on the school board is a Simpsons fan, picture a student like Nelson saying, "ha ha," as their phone is returned to them at the end of the day. Unfortunately, we live in an era where words like discipline and punishment are shoved to the sidelines for fear of offending certain people. But at the end of the day, kids need firm boundaries. Again, kids need firm boundaries. They need to know when they've crossed a line and what the consequences will be. And it would be ideal if these consequences were clearly laid out uniformly across all of the middle schools in the district. There's simply no excuse for a phone to be found out of its pouch when the student and parents have signed a contract. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matthew. Okay, President Proctor, there are no other hands for public comment.
Thank you. Let's have a board discussion on this. Who would like to start?
I do have one follow-up. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about what stakeholder engagement has looked like around the Yonder pouches and kind of how we arrived here. I think it'd be helpful.
Well, good question. This is, again, our first opportunity to present the Yonder pouch idea to the community. I think the genesis of this was just that it's been a hard year. And I've just acknowledged that. I think in times when I've presented before, one of the things that we recognize is that cell phones do present a distraction, an opportunity for students to engage in behavior that's been disruptive and I think harming to one another. This is an idea that I feel as the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services that will work to prevent students from using their phones in a way that they were not ideally intended for. To answer your question, this is our first opportunity. This is our first engagement in it.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I jumped. I remember having this conversation before the pandemic. I know that Samton High School has used this definitely before the pandemic. So it's probably been what, like 4 years now. I think it's the Yonder pouches themselves, I think are great. I have heard that, yeah, you could just totally cut them open or just, if you really, you could vandalize it and just rip it open if you need to. I have seen students use them at Samton High School. I've seen them actually close them. They're just basically just like a snap, and you just close it and then it's closed until you go ahead and put it on the magnet and it sort of releases the snap. and kids can use it. I would be curious to find out about the smartwatches specifically, let's say at San Mateo High School, and see how their use of it. I will say and I know we have almost middle school parent, and I'm middle school, and Allison, and Trustee President Proctor, you have middle school kids. Most of the stuff that we saw before the pandemic in terms of the bullying and the pressures and the anxiety that's when I talk about student wellness was related to a lot of the social media apps back on cell phones themselves, whether it's Instagram, whether it was Snapchat, whether it was Facebook, or now TikTok, I would say. You see that in those kids, and you see them using them, and that's just kind of become their part of their lives. But I do think at schools, it is important that the phones be put away. Being on different school campuses, I've been at Burrell the last 3 weeks during lunchtime. Of course, you do see the occasional student at lunch who's sort of hiding off on their phone trying to do something. But for the most part, the phones are put away. I would say at other middle schools that I've seen during passing periods, you see them come out. And I think that's just, part of that school's sort of culture. I do think that it's important that they're put away because of what it does to sort of overall student wellness. The smartwatches, I have some concerns. I will just say that my son, who's now going to be a 7th grader, we purposely got him a watch and not a cell phone, even though he's asked for a cell phone, because all he would do is play games and probably be on TikTok or something. But that would be before school. The watch, he's very good. And from what I hear from everyone else who has a smartwatch, it's kind of just away. It's off. There's actually a school time function where it kind of goes on. You can actually program it so that it's completely, all notifications are disabled. Of course, I think he could still text his friends and call his friends, but I don't think there's as much of a sort of social aspect as you see on some of the social media that you see on the cell phones. So I do have some concerns about that. I would be curious again to see what San Mateo High School does and whether that is a big distraction. Now, of course, if it is, I'm all for it, and let's go ahead and include that. I would just want more information on that. I do think that it is a really good idea to have additional feedback. I know that during one of the board community workshops at Burrell specifically, this topic was going to be brought up during the meeting, but in the end, the meeting took a different path and we never got to it. So that would have been a great opportunity to sort of spread the word. But I do think that additional sort of outreach would be helpful. I am a big proponent of it. I do have some questions and concerns. But I do believe it would do wonders for our student wellness and sort of the pressures that our middle schoolers have.
So I just wanted to say that I very clearly remember us having a conversation more recently. I don't know if it was in a study session, but Yes, we talked about it during the study session around discipline, and I feel like we very clearly directed our district to explore this, and it's been really effective in the Union High School District. I don't see them moving away from it. And the research around how it improves student morale and just the climate on campuses is very clear, and anything that we do different is going to make people feel uncomfortable. But I think, if there were to be some kind of emergency, kids are smart, like it would be okay, right? And having a cell phone is not necessarily going to like increase safety. How we make sure that our kids are supported and mentally how we prioritize their mental health does have to do with moving away from like social media and being able to focus and being able to like resolve issues in real life, in the real world, and not hide behind a screen. And I think it's like it's very clear that this is, I think it's very clear that this is what we need to do for kids. And we have our Union High School District that's already done it. It's been effective. I know staff at San Mateo High School who never want Yonder to go away. And the difference that they see in how kids engage with each other is very drastic. And I mean, I think they're like, these are the kinds of situations where it's important for folks to feel heard, and everyone will have different opinions, but like this is a I think a very clear way to make sure that we are supporting our kids' mental health. And Allison, you referenced earlier the student climate survey, and I was looking through it, and there were some concerning numbers around mental health and suicidal ideation, and we did not grow up how kids are growing up now, right? Like with this level of like, there's like documentaries on the social impacts of social media, specifically on like young girls and their self-esteem. And this is a way to interrupt that and slow that down and like take a chunk of time like to protect a chunk of time and like make sure that kids are dedicated and engaged, and not like using cell phones in a way that decreases their own safety, decreases their mental health, right? Like I think it's super clear. And I understand that. I mean, I think like when we talked about it in the study session, I feel like we gave a very clear, like we gave clear direction that like we wanted this for our district. And so I just want to say, like, if staff did not go about, doing like a really thorough public engagement process or family engagement process, I think that's on us. And it's not to say we can't take feedback, but maybe I don't know. I just think it's like if it's one of those things that like I think we need to move forward with because of all of the concerns that actually like some of our community members who gave public comment are referencing, right? It's like yeah. And then I also just want to say that I don't think it's appropriate for any of our staff to like try to like take a student's property like that their family purchased for them and has discretion over like when it's appropriate for them to have or not. So I'll stop there.
I can jump in. Yes, I do remember us having the conversation at the study session. And no, I will just say, I'm a former middle school teacher. We had a no cell phone policy. There were no such things as yonder pouches. This was almost 15 years ago, but it was a really strict policy. And this was before social media was as big as it was, but it was still highly and hugely problematic. So as soon as I think, Superintendent Ochoa and I have had this conversation previously, and as soon as this was mentioned as an option in terms of limiting cell phone use, I mean, I think, as our district staff have shared and my fellow trustees have shared, I think this addresses like a very real concern that we have for student wellness and health. And I think it's really important. I think for me, this stakeholder piece is not that I necessarily think we should have done something differently. I think as we think about kind of making recommendations, it's because I actually do think that there has been kind of some involvement, right, in terms of like how we interact with the public, the feedback that we've gotten from individuals, the way that we interpret data, the way that the district has, I think that there has been stakeholder engagement. And so I think when we present around, maybe not in a formal way, like let's sit all down and talk about, like bring together a group of people to talk about how we plan to address cell phone use, but there are other ways that we integrate and get community feedback around policy decisions and changes. And I think it's just important for us to, in these kinds of presentations, just to be as clear as we can about how that happened. So like we had a meeting around the discipline policy, the board had this discussion. This is the feedback that we've gotten from staff, et cetera, to be able to then say like, and that is why we're kind of making this is the data that we see in our district, and that's why we're making this recommendation. I think that just helps people to understand kind of like the timeline and how we arrived at this particular decision. So it doesn't feel like it's out of the blue or nobody was involved. So that's one piece of it. I also agree with Trustee Corzo. Like I think there are times for extensive community engagement, and there are times for a decision that needs to be made that we feel like is in district staff feels like is in the best interest of kids. I do also agree that it sounds like there are like some pieces that are still being worked out. And so my hope would be that as this actually gets rolled out at individual sites and with the district, that there's an opportunity for people to share kind of concerns. It doesn't mean that the decision's different, but it means that there's a conversation around concerns and rollout and implementation and those pieces. But yeah, fully in support of us helping our students make decisions that they, at the ages that they are and their developmental stages, just aren't able to make for themselves. And I just feel like it's such a weight, even though there's probably going to be some protests, right? It's such a weight off of their shoulders as it is ours, when you feel like you just have a break from something that is just making all of middle school so hard. And, like I remember, when we were in middle school, right? Like it's hard, but it also ended at 3 o'clock, right? For our kids, it never ends. Like it's 100% of the time. And so for us to be able to give them that break, I think is like crucial. I am interested in us like really clearly monitoring the impact of it, right? Because we're saying that it was impactful at the high school. Anecdotal feedback is fine. And like, what is the data to support that? How has it actually changed students' feelings? So I would like for us to I actually think it'd be important for us to do like a pre and a post survey to see like how it's actually impacting our students, or maybe we're utilizing the student data that we have from Healthy, whatever it is, as long as we have the right questions there to be able to do that kind of post analysis. But for us actually to be able to answer the question, has this done what we wanted to do despite like some of the potential downsides? And, I don't have school age kids or kids that would have access to a cell phone. So I can't relate to from a personal level to the point around, my student had a cell phone and now I'm not able to get in contact with them. The only thing I can think of is, the years and years and years that just wasn't an option for parents, right? You sent your kid, and I know that times, are different now, but I also think that there's no clear evidence or indicator that students having cell phones is something that's going to prevent something tragic from potentially happening, or the outcome of something tragic from happening, right? So I just think, as a district, we need to be, the point around that is kind of a different point around like, how are we ensuring that our campuses are safe? How are we communicating with families when there are emergencies that arise? How are we ensuring that that parents know kind of the status and are updated so that they don't need to contact an individual student in those moments. And I do think that that's on us to also just be clear around how we're communicating. And then just around, I think around the points around the violations, I think this policy should reflect our updated discipline policy and the move in our district towards restorative practices, not punitive measures. And I think that that's important. So I'm definitely not on board with us changing the language here to be punitive, to lay down the law. They're kids, and like, yes, the rules are the rules and we should hold the expectation. We also have to give our kids the benefit of the doubt that they can learn from their mistakes, as we expect people to give us as adults, that we can learn from our mistakes when appropriately redressed. And so I know that there's at least some desire to make kind of the punishment more punitive, and I do not support that.
I will just share quickly my perspective. I'm definitely in favor of having cell phone free schools. I guess, like, if I think about like the most tragic thing that can happen in a school, it makes me nervous that maybe these like unlocking devices are out in a hallway that would require, I guess, students to go outside of the classroom. So maybe, I don't know if other people share that same concern, but I would be curious to know like the cost for those unlocking devices, and if there's a way to put them in classrooms and just make them more accessible. I also think that to me, I think, I know that these are kids and they're supposed to be at school and they're supposed to be learning, but sometimes things come up and they need their parents sometimes. And I know that there's they should probably, like, let's just say a student is sad and hearing from their parent might be something that helps turn around their day. I just want to make sure that we're letting students know that your phone is put away because you're there to learn. But if there are issues, if you need help or you need a positive voice to pep you up, that there's someone else you can talk to. There, you can go to the office. There's still ways to still feel good about yourself and feel feel happy. So that was my concern, is just kind of around the safety piece and making sure that students know that there's someone they can talk to. Also, I didn't really consider the watch thing until Randy brought up her situation, because my kids don't have watches. So I think that's just an example of why we should engage with families, because there's going to be situations that come up that may be unique and we're not thinking of. So I am interested in, as we move forward, hearing from people, hearing from students. I'd love to hear from them, a month into this, how they feel and how do they think, their perspective is also going to shift. So they may think that this is the worst thing ever because they need their cell phones at every moment, but maybe a month into this, they're going to feel really great and they're going to be happy that they're not on the phone. So I'd love to hear from them. And just to kind of reiterate what I've already heard, I also am not in favor of punishing students by taking away their cell phone if they do make a mistake during the day and somehow they don't use the outer pouch or they get their phone out. For some students after school, they need that phone to be able to get home or get in touch with an adult for whatever reason. So I wouldn't want to take their phones away. But I do think this would be a great thing for our students. I think it would be great to have less distractions, less opportunity for cyberbullying, or I don't know, just not focus on school. So I think it'd be great. And I just have to figure out how to do the same at my house. Superintendent Ochoa, I see you have your hand raised. Would you like to add something?
Thank you, President Proctor. This year, we implemented the California Healthy Kids Survey to all middle school students, which was not necessarily a common practice for us in prior years. It would be more common to select one grade level and to have a sample of data, but this year we gave it to all of our students. When we asked students in that survey the following question: during the last year, how many times did other students spread mean rumors or lies or send hurtful pictures about you online, on social media, on their cell phone. In this district, over 500 students responded that that took place twice or more. So for me, this is something essential for us to do. You all know my preference is to have a YouTube, to have 6 parent meetings, to go and, you know, have a lot of engagement. But these results came back to us about 7-8 weeks ago. So we just haven't, and, you know, folding it all together, I just really want to reiterate, I want you to think about how many kids are telling us that they're being harassed or bullied because of the engagement and access with their phones on campus.
So I'm a little torn, to be honest. Sorry, Heather, you had to get up and down. I'm a little torn because I do feel like we could solicit more parent input just for different ideas. I mean, different comments. I think it sounds like we're all sort of on board on this, but additional input would be helpful or meaningful. The problem that I have, and this is where I'm torn, is that we technically don't have another meeting. This is our last meeting before our July break. And our next meeting isn't until basically 5 days or the week after school starts. And so if you want to implement this policy, you really have to do it at the beginning. It doesn't make sense to sort of wait and do it again. We do have a study session on the 4th, but that's a study session. And so there's an implementation timeline here that I struggle with. I do think if we move forward tonight, Superintendent Ochoa, I think it'd be great. Obviously, you had mentioned your YouTube and, you know, different workshops and everything else. I think that sort of the rollout, the implementation is key. So I mean, we'd have to like outreach as much as possible there. If we go ahead and move forward, I do have some questions still, some concerns about sort of the smartwatches, not just for my kid, but for anyone else. I think it's a little confusing because it does reference a smartwatch connected to a phone. My son doesn't have a phone and it's only his watch. And I know that there's others out there where they don't have a cell phone. So we'd have to clean that up a little bit. I would say before the events in Texas and Uvalde, I would say absolutely it's all sort of social media and everything else that we've seen, the harm that has happened and the cyberbullying that does happen and the instances that we have had on campuses this year. A lot of it is for, what did they say, for views or something? Kids come back and say, oh, they're doing it because, you know, they want clout or, you know, they want the views, they want the likes on social media. And so they act out on campus. I think by doing this, this would definitely help that situation by not completely eliminating it, but reducing that need for it. I do know that I think at Sam High School, I think every teacher, maybe every classroom, there's mobile magnet ones. I think that they have, or they may have a few that are spread around. Also, I have heard that you can really just cut it with scissors if you need to. So it's really not that big of a deal. I also mentioned to a parent comment that I got from a parent a couple of weeks ago when I mentioned that this was something that we were looking to. He happened to be a San Mateo High School teacher for the last 15 years. And he said this was the one thing in the last 15 years that has had a dramatic impact to the school wellness, student wellness. And so he was a huge proponent in it. And I thought, you know, I know that's anecdotal, but I do value, he's a parent and also a teacher in our high school district. So I don't know where we go from here, honestly. I think it sounds like we're all sort of in support of it. I do have, I mean, obviously there's some outreach and implementation issues, but I also do have some sort of overall general concerns about cleaning up the smartwatch. Or maybe we do maybe that's added later, or maybe it's maybe do it all at once. I don't know the answer to that, but and I wish we kind of had more time to sort of talk about it before our next meeting or before the start of school.
I was going to suggest if there's a way we just start with cell phones only, and like really maybe give it some time to consider whether watches are actually part of this, just because I hadn't considered that kids are using the watches for other things, but just my suggestion.
I think we can, with the board, board member making a motion to approve this document with it applying only to cell phones.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, I feel like you can still have like an Apple Watch or whatever that doesn't have the cellular piece of things. And so that can do all of the things that you know, do other things. Like I don't know. I mean, you having an Apple Watch that has cellular is basically just the same as having a cell phone. So I mean, there's certain things you can't do, I guess, but in terms of like texts and whatever, like there's a lot you can still do. So I don't know. I would be an advocate for keeping that piece in, and then I think there's a lot of smart watches that don't have the cellular capability. That's just my thought.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I would actually be concerned that it's like creates an inequity in that, like, you know, higher income families are usually able to provide their kids with a smartwatch, whereas like cell phones are more accessible to all. And so there'd be this disparity of like, you know, who still has it, like, you know, access to group iMessage and chatting, and right, like kids are smart and they would just kind of shift from, you know, maybe they're not on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever on a smartwatch, but like they can still be in their group chats. And that is just a concern that I would have. And I don't want us to like create an inequity there. I do think like if a smartwatch does not have internet connection or cell phone access, then like, you know, it's basically like more like a Fitbit type of thing, which is fine. So that's just my thoughts. And I think there was something else I wanted to address, which was, oh, yes, I know what it was. So the other thing is that I think, Allison, you brought up the point that like, and I've actually, like, I've talked with like parents who, you know, had their child call them and say that like, you know, they weren't okay at school, and like they had to go and get their kid at school, and you know, their child didn't feel comfortable like going into the office and asking for help. And I guess like I want to just elevate that all of our kids now have a Chromebook, and so there's still email, there's still like Google Chat. And I know that kids like, I know like my kid was in a couple like group chat thing, like group chats on Google, and like they, you know, him and his friends sometimes have like meets, and they just like even at home, right after they're done with their homework and whatnot. So like it's not like they would be totally disconnected and not have anything. Like it would just look a little different. Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure like we were aware of that. And also it's true that like this is you know, our last meeting in June, and we're taking July off. But I mean, I don't know about y'all, but like if we need to come back and add a meeting, I'm down to do it. But and also like there's 4 of us here now, and it's a little difficult. Like if we don't, you know, if like 2 of us feel a certain way and other 2 feel a different way, we're gonna kind of be at a deadlock. So yeah, just my thoughts on all of those points.
I see your point about the equity thing, and I do agree. So I would agree that just keep the smartwatches there. So that is a different point, and I value that. And so yeah, I would say, yeah, put on the Yonder pouch. The other thing is that, of course, our kids, like you raised the emails and everything else, they can't actually email from our Chromebooks because they can't email anyone outside of our district. So and the other thing is that you mentioned the group chats. Yeah, they've actually shifted from their cell phones because everyone has a Chromebook, and so now they're all on the chats, which I understand the teachers have monitored that, and we as a district have also monitored that and been able to sort of to reduce that in some way. So yeah, but yeah, that's fine. Smartwatches, put it in, makes sense.
I'll just add one thing real quick, sorry. I just wonder, like, is maybe there's a way that like we can have like only parents and guardians like added to, I mean, it might be really complicated with like tech, and I don't know, Peter, how Peter will feel about this, but like maybe there's like a way that we can be mindful of that.
I was going to say, so I thank you for bringing up the equity piece of it. I guess my one thought is that this is like all new, right? Like this Yonder pouches are going to be new. Kids not having their cell phones and their watches is all new. And I just wondered if there's any like flexibility, and like I'm okay with starting the year with no cell phones and no watches, but I think we need to be able to hear from people and adjust as necessary. You know, I don't know what it's going to be like. I don't know. You know, every year seems to come with its own challenges, and we just don't know. So I guess what I'm saying is I just want to make sure that we're like reflecting back and of course seeing the data of it, but also just making sure that we are hearing from people, both students and families, to see how it's working. And in terms of the Chromebooks, I almost think it's worse. I mean, they can make any kind of Google documents that they want, and they can share it with their friends, and they're super mean to each other. And I don't think that, you know, if it's almost like with kids, if you put up one roadblock, they kind of figure out how to get around it. So I don't know that, you know, maybe that's the next step, is looking at the Chromebooks and what we can do there to help. Because I don't know, I don't think it ends with just cell phones and watches, but yeah, that's my thoughts. They're smart little people.
Unless there's other comments, we can make a motion for this. So make a motion to approve the cell-free environment.
I second.
Thank you, Trustee Watkins, for the motion, and Trustee Corzo for the second. All in favor, please unmute and say aye.
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 Okay, that is 4 yeses. We won't have we'll have cell phone free environments in middle school next year. Okay, moving on to 6.2 special education update.
Thank you again, Board of Trustees and Superintendent Ochoa. Next item up is our special education update with Director Heather Morgan.
Okay, let me just get this set up real quick. Sorry, I'm having trouble sharing this. Let's see if I can do it. There we go. Okay, and then also. Okay, hope everyone can see that. And I'm gonna minimize this guy over here. Possible. Nope. Sorry. There we go. Okay. Good evening, Board of Trustees and Superintendent Ochoa. And thank you, Assistant Superintendent Hills, for the introduction. I have our June edition of our special education update for the school year. So tonight we will just very quickly review our content presented in January, go over our program updates and implications, fiscal updates and implications, and staffing updates for this year, and wrap it up with our Cdac report from Jennifer Maiman, who will be joining me in a little bit. Okay, back in January, we went over the initial plans for our behavior support team design and implementation, our professional development summer plan. We also talked about the non-public agency and non-public school contracts and costs, and classified certificated and other certificated classroom and other certificated vacancies. One of the programs that we have started this year and will continue for next year is the inclusion model. Our strategic planning committee was assembled to move forward with this and understanding both the financial and structural implications of inclusion practices. Next school year will be dedicated to this work's continued research and development of a recommendation for our district implementation, and we'll be using the CDE's 2021 publication of Inclusion Works, second edition. And this is an updated version of the program layout that I shared with you previously. As I shared with you before, we are moving towards putting more programs more evenly balanced within the 4 complexes of our district. And you can see in bold are some of the changes. So we are adding a mild mod SDC class to Brewer Island. We're adding a mod severe class to Beach Park. San Mateo Park will be getting 2 classes that were formerly at Laurel. So we're moving those out of the Abbott complex and into the Burrell complex. And then we're also adding another mild mod back into Bowditch that was there previously, but we've moved it out. So with these changes, the numbers on the side show how many programs are at the school, and you can see a little bit more of a balanced approach. We'll continue to do this, and we'll continue to structure classes to make more of a balanced opportunity for students to participate in programs in their home complex. Okay. And just an update on our behavior support team. I mentioned before what BCBAs were. We have the board certified behavior analysts. We have actually now hired 3, and they will be heading up the behavior team. We also have 3 registered behavior techs hired, and we're actively recruiting and hiring more for next year. Our goal is to have around 10. And then the paraprofessional 3, which if you recall it's a higher level of training with professional development that we will provide internally by our BCBAs and our RBTs for paras, who will get additional hours of training in behavior management, and they will also be compensated at a higher level. And that job description is now complete and approved, and it's posted, and we are interviewing. And just to get you up to date on our special education summer, tomorrow is our last day of the first offering, and there will be another one in August with the same courses. And we have customized lessons or sections, if you will, for each of our service provider types, including administrators, ed specialists, psychologists, occupational therapists, speech and language therapists, and general education teachers. In all of the following areas, in areas of legal obligations, IEP writing and facilitation, case management, data collection, behavior management, and curriculum. Okay, and we are also continuing our equity work for our dual identified students. These are our students who are English learners and also eligible for special education. And the leadership team has begun to assemble a group of representatives from sites and different service providers. We want perspectives from all expertise areas. This team is expected to perform the following in 22-23, including a deep analysis and review of program implications based on the California's Practitioner's Guide for Educating English Learners with Disabilities from the CDE 2019. and also continued analysis and monitoring of our significant disproportionality data from the CDE. And I will be covering some of that data this evening when we get into our financial updates and implications. Okay, and non-public agency contract goals. So you will recall, and I will again share under the financial implications as well, that we have some goals to reduce our NPAs with the creation of the behavior program, which I just described, which is the tiered support of BCBAs, RBTs, and Para 3s. Also hiring our own San Mateo-Foster City School District employees, which creates more accountability and efficiency. Also adding FTEs in some other service provider areas to improve our capacity and efficiency. And then finally, professional development around significant disproportionality, tier 1 interventions that would happen in the gen ed setting, and also initial instruction in collaboration with our education services department. Okay, and here we have, let me see if I can move this, guys. You can see this better. Sorry about that. Here we go, it's better. These are our current actuals for this school year by position for NPAs. So the non-public agencies do cover a variety of roles, including our occupational therapists and physical therapists. You can see the encumbrance for this year was 1.3 million. For speech and language pathology, $1.9 million. For RSP teachers, 624,000. You'll see a difference there because our many of our RSP teachers are in-house employees, so that was a cost of agency employees. Our paras, BTs, and one-to-one aides are about $5.5 million, and mental health clinicians at 209,000, with a grand total of 9.7 million. Okay, next. I'll go down. Go. I want to go down. There we go. For assessments and curriculum, this includes most of our assessments that we use when we're qualifying students and looking for eligibility. So the protocols that we use, and then also a little bit of pre-K curriculum is in this group. So you can see that we invest in a variety of protocols for all of our psychoeducational and academic and other assessment areas. And here, this is just a list of the settlements for this school year. There were 17 settlements in the 21-22 school year. The totals are in the third column. You're all familiar with all of these, but I just wanted to put it in one place for you. And you can see that the total cost of settlements for this school year was $883,000. And I wanted to go a little deeper into significant disproportionality because we do continue to have a disproportionate number of students eligible for IEPs who are Latinx or Hispanic. And we are in our third year of monitoring by the CDE. This overall, here you can see the total number of students in our district in the bottom line, and then the number of students within each of those demographic bands who qualify for an IEP in the top line. Okay. Also, eligibility demographics continued. This is broken down by eligibility category and also by ethnicity. So these are areas where we are being monitored right now. There's a second page, so I'll be sharing that with you. The first three sections are autism, emotional disturbance, and intellectual disability. And this page is where we are seeing more of a concern, and this is why we are currently in significant disproportionality. You'll see that students with disabilities under OHI or other health impairment, we have 94 students in the Hispanic band. We have 215 students that qualify for specific learning disability in that same band. And then also for speech and language impairment. So these IEPs they could happen concurrently with another eligibility, or they can stand alone. And in that same group, again, 151 students qualify. And so that is why we are currently in significant disproportionality review and continue to make progress in reducing those numbers and making students eligible. Okay, staffing updates and implications. Our current staffing status for this school year. And I will say that this does change by the moment more than even just daily. So this is as current as last Friday, but I think I've hired in a few areas and we've also gotten some resignations since then. So things do continue to flux until June 30th. So 14 classified vacancies, that would be for paras. And then for certificated resignations and retirements, we have 8 in the ed specialist category, that would be RSP and SDC, 3 psychologists, 2 speech and language pathologists, and 2 preschool SDC teachers. So our total certificated resignations and retirements is 15. Okay, and if Peter's able to bring on Jennifer, this is her Cdac presentation.
I'm here. Can everybody hear me? Okay, so. Great. Well, thank you all for the time this evening. Just a really brief summary of our work in Cdac this year. We had a great year. We provided a lot of really wonderful resources to families of children with disabilities. A few of our parent education topics and resources, we had a great presentation from Karen Breslow from the San Mateo County SELPA and our district's lead school psychologist and SLP on sort of the nuts and bolts of IEPs and the eligibility areas. We had a really wonderful presentation from the Common Ground Society, which is a group of parents and teachers in the North Bay, and they presented about inclusion. A wonderful presentation from Krista Martinelli at the IEP Collaborative about special education law and parent rights. And all of these recordings and resources are on our Cdac website. And just sort of a little anecdote to share. A friend of mine who's also a family in the district shared that her family is relocating to Santa Rosa. And she said, as soon as we get settled, we know who to reach out to find services for our son who accesses special education. We saw the presentation about the Common Ground Society. We've already reached out to their director, and it's really gratifying to hear parents being able to really use the resources that we're providing. We are looking to change our structure for the next school year. I think to move towards a more sustainable model that will last beyond Amy Fickenshire, the Cdac chair, and myself. We'd like to sort of move into a shared leadership model where we have 3 kind of distinct groups, each chaired by a parent volunteer. One would be parent education. And so the chair of this group would secure organizations or individuals to present to Cdac. One would be a communications and outreach chair, and that person would work with the district and leadership team to publicize Cdac meetings and also strategize on how to reach and provide resources to families of students with disabilities who we might not otherwise be already reaching. And then the last is an advocacy and policy review chairperson who would work closely with the director of special ed to review district policy and programs as they relate to special education. The chair would also work with a team to write and present recommendations to the special ed department and the Board of Trustees. So if there's any parents on this call who are interested, the link to the volunteer interest form is on the slide, and this will be on the district website and on the Cdac website. We would love to hear from you, and yeah, we're really pleased with the work that happened this year. We're really grateful to our partnership with the district, to working together with Heather and Diego. I think it's been a really successful year. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And that takes us to the conclusion of our presentation. And I will be here for your questions and comments.
I had a question around, thank you for the presentation. I had a question around, I know there's kind of goals in some of these areas, you know, reducing disproportionality, reducing the amount that we're funding on and or that we're spending on NPA and NPS. I was wondering if you have specific benchmarks for those. What do we expect the reduction to be? What do we want the reduction to be over, you know, the next year, 2 years, 3 years? And if you don't have that off the top of your head, I think it would be really helpful to include that moving forward so we know kind of what we're striving for. I think for a couple of reasons. One, just transparency, and, you know, two, that we can monitor progress around the goals we're setting. And also just, I think it's helpful in terms of communication with the community, right? Like, it doesn't mean that $9 million is going to go down to $1 million next year, right? There's like a process for this, but also that we have, you know, realistic, but I'm turning into comments. What was my question?
About goals, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do
Okay.
you have goals?
So yes, thank you. I would like to do a little bit more research in terms of the specific goals from the CDE, because those are very easy for me to share with you. So let me get those for you. And then in terms of the overall, especially with NPAs, basically the reduction in NPAs are going to come from the offset and the other spending that we're doing. So I can get also more specific numbers for you, but like you said, we wouldn't expect that to be something that happens overnight, but it would be something that we will, as we invest in things like the behavior support team and other employees, that we would see the NPA costs reduce as a result of those expenditures.
Yeah, that's something you can bring back for the next presentation. That'd be great.
My question is on the NPA and NPS actuals by year. Would it be possible to get the number of students, and I guess for NPA, maybe number of staff that this each year this encompasses? Because when you just look at the numbers, it's obviously going up, but I don't know if that's like, do we have more students at these schools or more students?
Yes, I can get that information for you.
Thank you.
I was wondering about the PD. Is this a paid PD or is it voluntary?
Yes. So yes, it is paid for anyone who wants to participate, actually. It happened concurrently with our gen ed instruction also. So if our special education staff is interested in going to that, they can go on the flip side. So if they attended SPED this week, then they can go to gen ed in August.
Thank you. And then I also had a question about sorry, let me find the slide. The over-identification of Latinx students so let's say, like, I'm just trying to understand what those numbers would look like for a district similar to ours.
That wasn't identified as significantly disproportionate. Yes. I can get you that a similar district comparison.
Thank you. And then are there, like, actually, this might be a comment. Is there a way to, like, I'm thinking about like our California schools dashboard where there's like, you know, like you can like, it's like color coded, like this is red, like this is really drastic, right? Like this is orange, this is yellow, and then this is green, this is normal, right? I guess that's not a question, but I'll just stop there. I'm just thinking, like, would something like that work? Or
in terms of collecting data, we can prepare data in a way that would represent it that way. And like I said, also to Trustee Watkins, I think that getting more of the details from our goals from the CDE would be helpful. Mm-hmm.
Oh, and sorry, I had a question for Jen with our Cdac. I was wondering if our Cdac has like a social media presence, because like there's like you know, Facebook groups and I think it'd be like it would be another way to like inform families. Yeah, so that was a question. And then one more question was around, are there any meetings specifically to like the Latinx special education like community to make sure that they're aware of this? And if so, what does that look like?
So the outreach for like our Latinx Cdac families. Right. So we've actually, Jennifer and Amy and I've worked really hard on making sure that we have that outreach, and with the help of Diego Perez also throughout our usual communication channels. And then also having the most excellent translator, she's wonderful, who's joined all of our Cdac meetings in a very wonderful professional manner. And then also just direct outreach also, where, you know, we are trying to connect with families, you know, one-on-one and other ways of getting out into schools and classrooms and making sure that families know. And also, just on a side note, I was actually hoping to put together a picnic for this year. I ended up getting ill and I couldn't, I know COVID, but I'm looking at instead doing a welcome back picnic for all families within our community, and that would be welcome to everyone. So we're thinking that might be a nice way to kick off the year and get everyone kind of familiar with our program.
Yeah, I think in terms of a social media presence, that's definitely something that Amy and I have talked about. I think we just have not had the bandwidth to do it this year. And, you know, we're hoping that we can recruit some more parents to Cdac leadership positions. And I think the communications and outreach one is a really important one. So if we can get another parent volunteer to be able to kind of spearhead a social media effort and really have the time to moderate it, that would be fantastic. But it's a great idea. I agree.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Actually, I had one more question. Looking at the page where it talks about new or moved programs.
Yes.
And so like looking at preschool specifically, there's 4 preschool programs identified and 2 are in Foster City. And I feel like George Hall is also pretty close to Foster City in location. And so I'm just curious if you feel like we're like spread throughout the district in a way that meets the needs of students.
So preschool's slightly different than our TK through 8 program in terms of where the programs lie, because initially they were designed more towards the actual needs of the students that are placed in the program and less about the neighborhood that they're in. So for example, we have like inclusion classes. We also have language classes for students that need extra support with like language rich environment. So the physical location was a little bit less considered when those were originally designed. So yes, and I would like to continue to spread those out. And I think that's work that we're doing with Carrie Hazelton and looking at the preschool program overall, making sure that we have offerings that are close to all neighborhoods.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Yeah, sorry, I had another question. For the students that are part of the group that are over-identified, what does the process look like of, let's say, like, I don't know what the term is, honestly, but like maybe they shouldn't have been in special education. Like, how do we assess that, and then what supports do we give them to like bridge the gap for them to like have the support that they need but not continue to stay in special education, right?
I think I understand your question. So there's a process for reevaluation every 3 years with special education. So at that time, they get a full battery of psychoed and academic assessments. And if they are no longer determined to be eligible, we still do look at supports within the gen ed setting that can be offered. And that, so, I mean, one of the things that I spoke about earlier, and I think that's really important to be considered here, is that we do stick to our plan in all of the work that we've been doing in terms of how do we support students in a gen ed environment before they become identified as special education. And part of that has to do with the tier 1 instruction, the interventions that are in place and available, and the professional development for all staff. So not only SPED, but also our general education staff. So that applies here as well. So as students are reevaluated, they have to continue to be eligible for services to keep their IEP. And then also the goal always for all students in special education is to eventually not require the services. That's really what we're going for. So that's why we have that reevaluation process. But yes, it does happen on a triennial calendar.
Okay, this is my last question, I promise. I'm thinking about like what this looks like for kids, right? For students, and specifically for this demographic.
Yep.
Are we seeing, like, I'm just thinking about like the data and how it would look like if we were to disaggregate it by age or grade level, right? Like, so are we seeing more kids in the over-identified group that are like on the older side? And like, I mean, because the hope is that we're not continuing to like, we're not continuing to over-identify, right? I don't know if that's like a clear question, but
I think I understand your question, and I can speak to it. And I can also get you more data specifically about the groups that are concerning. Right now, the groups I'm really focusing on are the primary groups. So it's our primary students, we have to offer them strong general instruction in the gen ed setting, and also thorough interventions, and those interventions need to be offered and done with fidelity before we start talking about identifying or finding students eligible for special education.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Can we please go to public comment, Peter?
If there's any members of the public that would like to make comment on this item, please use the raise your hand functionality within Zoom now. Okay, Marcella, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to thank Jennifer Mayman for sharing the resources, and kind of that last slide was really fantastic. And related to Trustee Corzo's comment, I'm wondering if this particular slide could be shared out more widely on social media, could go out in flyers. I was unable to attend Cdac meetings, and I found that information to be a great resource. I also want to thank Director Morgan for such detailed and clear updates. It's easy to understand, and we get to see the whole picture in these presentations. So thank you very much. I did have a couple of considerations or pieces that I think would be interesting to continue to explore. The disproportionality is looked at related to race and ethnicity, but I'm also very curious about our emergent bilingual students and teasing that out separate from a race and ethnicity standpoint. Trustee Corzo just asked about making sure, like, how do we identify that students are appropriately qualified? And while the special education process, there is that process of triennial evaluations, I do wonder if we've engaged in an auditing process. I haven't necessarily seen that happen a lot in districts, but I know that that has happened. That was very common when I worked in medical clinical settings and could potentially be helpful in a disproportionality audit. And then two last pieces. Emergent bilingual students benefit from home language support. We have a lot of Spanish speakers, and I just want to caution using the California Practitioner's Guide for Educating English Learners, because it tends to ignore the importance of immersion programs. Within that statement, a 464-page guide only talks about immersion or bilingual programs 59 times out of 123,000 words. So it kind of fails to recognize the systemic and historical issue of access to dual language immersion programs for those dually identified students. And I think we have the space as we rethink inclusion to make sure that our students who are emergent bilingual and identified as students with disabilities have access to their home language. And then the final point I want wanted to just kind of propose for just consideration. And obviously I'll be filling out the form to help within Cdac, but ABA is currently being identified as extremely traumatic in autistic adults. And so I just encourage us to exercise caution as we think about behavioral therapy, especially when it focuses on compliance rather than student joy, engagement, and leadership. And then last little piece that I always say, I think reduction in NPA could be impacted by increasing partnerships with local universities in internship programs or grants. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcella. Okay. President Proctor, there are no other hands for public comment.
Okay, thank you. Are there any board comments?
Yeah, thank you, President Proctor. Thank you, Heather, for the presentation. Trustee Watkins and President Proctor had the exact same questions that I had regarding the benchmarks and everything else. So I did not ask those during this time and waited for my comment section. So definitely agree sort of on reduction of the MPA, sort of what is that measurement? And obviously there's no sort of silver bullet, but it would be nice to have just some ideas of like, what are we doing? And I know that when you look at the entire special ed community, when you talk about other districts, it's a constant flow of, you know, the MPA and NPS go up and then they go down and then they go up. And it's sort of this cycle. And so it sounds like that I'm happy that we're actually going to look at it and see if we can pull some of that, those students back and reduce those numbers. So I'm glad we're looking at that. The amounts in terms of the settlements, I understand that this is a large amount, and we knew that actually kind of going into this year. One of the things during the pandemic, and this is not just for our district, but it's for that I've heard throughout our county, is that every district is kind of looking at going through the same issues. The state gave us allowances during the pandemic for, you know, changing the school calendar and waiving certain minutes and other things. But when it came to special education, they didn't give us any waivers. And so that caused a major problem throughout the districts. And this is a really high number. And so what I'm hoping is that when we look at sort of the benchmarks or sort of metrics of where the goals are, you know, I would assume that this is also going to go down because I know that we had a number of families that really we did not or were not able to provide services to, and they are showing up here on the settlements. But I'm hoping that with your help and your lead and everything else that we're doing, that that this number should hopefully be drastically reduced next year. And so I would love to sort of see how that goes. And I don't know, I know we're up for a special ed update, actually our next meeting, which is August 4th, the study session. So I'm not sure, I mean, I don't know, we may have to figure out whether or not that's too soon. But I would love to see how this goes in terms of the implementation. Obviously, as you mentioned earlier, the hiring is as of last Friday, and it's constantly flowing. And we do know that obviously when we start school, we also do have people leave for certain reasons or they don't show up and we scramble. So I know that's also an issue. Overall, I think that was my last comment. I do want to thank you for your work on this. I am glad that we have this update. I really am thankful for all the hard work that you guys have done. It's been a crazy year, especially in special education, and we've moved things around a lot, but I do really feel like we are on the uptick. And so I really appreciate all your hard work and everything that your team and your staff and everyone is doing. So thank you.
Just want to make a really quick comment, and sorry I had to leave. I have to be home because my husband's getting ready to get on a flight. And we'll have to listen in a minute, but I just wanted to make a really quick comment. One, thank you for the presentation and the consistent updates. And thank you, Jennifer and Amy, for all the work that you are doing. I'm really excited to see how that collaboration continues. I know I've said this a couple of times, and I think it actually fits into kind of my question around the numbers and you know, the budget piece of things for kind of what our goals are, which is kind of, I would love to see I mean, strategic plan maybe isn't the right word, but a kind of a plan for the next year, 3 year, 5 year. How do all of these pieces fit together from all across all of these areas? So the fiscal implications, the programmatic implications, and would love to kind of get some that information, if possible, at our next meeting, to have a sense of kind of what the thinking is there. I think it would be really helpful to ground us in kind of what those short-term and long-term goals are. So I'm going to keep asking for that and appreciate all of the work. I know there's a lot going on, and so I understand why you know, why we aren't there yet, but would like to push us to do that and share with us in the community. So thank you all.
Yeah, I'll just keep it short. I think I got all of my discussion points out in my questions, but I also want to thank you for this excellent presentation. It made it really, I think the reason I had so many questions was because like it was really easy to understand and it got all of my wheels turning. And you know, there is so much to do in this area for our kids, but also like we're making progress and it feels very tangible, especially when we think about, like, you know, we already see a difference from last year when we had some, like, more severe staffing issues, and now it just feels a little different. It feels more intentional, and like the progress is clear. So thank you so much. And Jen and Amy, thank you also for all of your hard work. I want to help. So I'll follow up with you too.
Heather, thank you so much for the presentation. I, again, just like everyone else says, I really appreciate all of the information here that you've presented, and it is easy to understand and brings up a lot of questions, which is good. I don't really have a lot of comments other than I just like kind of look at the staffing update and the implications, and wondering, you know, if we're short staffed, how does that impact students, you know, in the school year, and wondering if, like, how that correlates to possible settlements and all this other stuff that comes up. And so you know, I'd love to maybe after June 30th, when you kind of get the people in the right places, maybe even just a quick email or something to kind of stay on top of that. I'm just curious. But again, I thank you for that. And then to Jen and Amy, just thank you so much for all the work that you do for Cdac. You know, I just think this is like a very valuable group that parents can be part of and learn so much about all of the different services. And there's been presentations on laws, and just so much information is out there. And there's a lot of people that they don't always know where to turn. And so I think it's a great committee, and I'm glad that you're hopefully going to get some more help, and just thank you for staying engaged.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Okay, we can move on.
All right, thank you all.
Item 7.1 is the approval of the 2022-2023 budget.
Yes, thank you. So last time we spent time sharing with you an update. And one of the items I want to follow through on, which we mentioned last time, which we did talk about special education, funding for special education. And we have had the opportunity to speak with the county office since that time about the methodology used for AB 602 funding. As recent as last week, they've conveyed they're continuing to advocate for the methodology to be revisited. I think that would benefit districts throughout the entire county. So they're continuing to do that. There may be some change at some point as they continue to advocate for us. From a process perspective, during those sessions with the county, I suggested strongly to the county that they evaluate how other counties look at some of the operational issues. I know that in other counties, they do have representatives from the CBO community that participate with the special education directors and oftentimes at the superintendent level. What was shared with me from the county is that they've not had that practice in place. So I strongly encourage them. I volunteered myself, having the privilege to serve in the superintendent capacity and having had the privilege to serve to chair the SELPA in another county for superintendents and the interaction with directors and CBOs. I volunteered to do that in our county. And so we're going to have a small group of people that's going to meet to talk about that from a process perspective, because I think it can result in some really engaging conversations and could potentially benefit us all financially. So from a process perspective, that was the one item we talked about last time. There may be some change. There's no change as of yet, but it may change. And I did ask them to change that process to institute having the CBOs involved in that discussion operationally. And I also, once again, at the last CBO meeting, strongly encouraged the county to host sessions with the tax assessor on a regular routine basis. I've shared with them the methodology used in other counties, and there were several folks on the call that asked for us to do that as well too. So I volunteered to chair that as well too with them. So hopefully there's some change. But again, we're bringing for you this budget tonight. Want to thank all the team, and it was a large team of people that were involved in putting this together for you and for our community. And we're recommending approval of the budget to you tonight.
Thank you very much. Are there any clarifying questions? Okay, seeing none, let's go to public comment, Peter.
If there are any members of the public that would like to make comment on this item, please use the raise your hand functionality within Zoom now. Okay, President Proctor, we have no hands for public comment.
Okay, thank you. Are there any board comments?
Just thank you, Patrick, for all your hard work and your team. I know putting it all together, in some ways it's a year-long process, right? With just different stages that just keeps repeating every single year. So no, I really appreciate it. I don't have any specific questions or comments, but thank you.
We also don't have any questions or comments, but other than thank you. And I know this is a lot of work to put together, so thank you very much. A lot of moving pieces, I should say.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also reviewed it, and if the accountant on our team is good with it, well, I'd like to motion to approve the budget.
I feel like it's.
Oh, am I skipping a step? Where are we on questions?
No, I'll second the motion. I was just going to make a comment that no, we had it.
Oh, we did.
Yes, I'm just going to make the comment that as the last board meeting of our school year, it seems like we are just limping to the end here. Sorry.
Speak for yourself.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I've seconded the motion. I'm sorry. I've seconded the motion. I feel like we're. Yeah.
Thank you, Trustee Corzo, for the motion, and Trustee Chin for the second. We will go to a roll call vote. Trustee Watkins. Yes. Trustee Corzo.
Yes.
Trustee Chin.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. That has been approved. Thank you. Oh, shoot, I'm on the wrong agenda, sorry. The next item is item 8.1, addendum for assistant superintendent employment contracts.
Yes, thank you. Tonight's agenda has the recommended addendum for Assistant Superintendent Dennis Hills and David Chambliss, and the recommended increases for both these assistant superintendents are the same percentage increases that the other management team is receiving, and that's a 3% increase for the 22-23 fiscal year and a 3% increase for the 23-24 fiscal year. So we recommend approval
Thank you. Are there any clarifying questions? Okay, Peter, can you go to public comment, please?
If there are any members of the public that would like to make comment on this item, please use the raise your hand functionality within Zoom now. Okay. Randy, go ahead.
Hello, good evening again. So just a month ago, didn't you just approve a new contract for Superintendent Chambliss? And isn't this kind of like double dipping? I mean, nothing against him, but like, how does this work? I mean, it's just piling money upon money upon money. When I look at the, classified staff and, employees who work at the annex that can't even get subsidized spots for their own kids to attend annex. So how does that work? Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
I'm sorry, do you want me to respond?
President Proctor, we have no other hands for public comment.
Thank you. Yes, please.
So we did not bring forward the addendums for Mr. Chambliss at the last board meeting. There was, Randy's correct, that we did bring for the superintendent's contract as well as my contract last board meeting. And on the agenda tonight, just for clarification, is the 3 assistant superintendents, Dennis Hills and David Chambliss, as well as Diana Tavares.
I think Randy's referring to the fact that we just had a new contract for David, and I think Diana was also a new contract that we recently approved. So just
I may stand correct. I see what's on the agenda here. I will just let me just take a quick look.
I think, Deputy Superintendent, the issue is that with Assistant Superintendent Chambliss, the contract extension that took place did not include those pay increases and was an extension of the number of years. And the way that the assistant superintendents are compensated, we have a scale that our assistant superintendents sit on. So earlier this year, when Assistant Superintendent Hills came on board, he was placed, if you can think about it as like step 1 of like similar to a teacher salary scale. And so the same process happened with Assistant Superintendent Tavares and now Assistant Superintendent Chambliss. And the reason we didn't do it in advance was because while the contract language was being put together, we didn't actually have approved agreements with all of our employee groups. If you recall, Assistant Superintendent Tavares was hired a couple months ago. I don't have it right in front of me, but I think it was the last meeting in April or the first meeting in May. And we just didn't have approved contracts for CSEA until just the last meeting.
thank you for that clarification. Any board comments on this?
Motion to approve.
Second. Thank you, Trustee Chen for the motion and Trustee Corso for the second. We'll go to roll call vote. Trustee Watkins. Yes. Trustee Corso.
Yes.
Trustee Chen.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Okay, those have been approved. We will now go to item 9.1, discussion on middle school discipline data, student and parent survey results, school safety.
Thank you, President Proctor. Tonight's presentation is really a first opportunity for the public and for the board to digest a lot of content from the district's discipline files. This item has been posted since last week, but we've actually been talking about these issues for the last month and a half at various board community workshops and family engagement sessions. I think back to our meeting over at Brewer Island, that two trustees attended. I think back to our Burrell meeting that Trustee Chin was present for, and numerous other engagements that we've had. And so what this report does is it gives the public an opportunity to see how discipline shifts over years, to see the way changes happen from one year to the next. And it also gives the board and the public an opportunity to see student and parent responses to survey data that we've sent out, which has been very extensive survey data. And so I just want to highlight a couple of key points. In reference to the parent survey data, one of the key takeaways for us was we sent out a district-wide survey. So it reached, close to 3,000 families. We specifically sent it to middle school parents because that's where we see school discipline issues really accelerate and really become very intensified. And we received 215 responses. So I think it's important for us to acknowledge that when we survey families, we are actually reaching a portion of families. So it's important to also visit school communities and talk to parents face to face to hear what parents say. And it's also important to give parents the opportunity to reach out to us and communicate with us what they feel is needed for their kids in terms of feeling safe at school and having a positive place to be during school. So in the parent results, some of the main items that came forward to the district was we asked the question how parents felt about having school resource officer presence on campus, and half the parents said on a regular basis they would be in favor of it. But again, this is half of 215 parents. When we asked the question if there are ways to ensure school safety without relying on school resource officers, close to 40% said that they agree with that statement, meaning that while the parents may have stated, yes, we have a general openness to it, they also acknowledge there is a way to address school safety and not utilize a school resource officer strategy in order to achieve that. We asked the question as to whether or not parents supported restorative justice practices, and this is a comment that Trustee Watkins specifically mentioned tonight and Trustee Corzo specifically mentioned. And basically 85% of parents were in support of or neutral towards that statement, which is a very high percentage and a really strong statement from parents. So those were some of the parent highlights, but we also surveyed our students and we got a whole lot more responses from our students than we did from parents. So we got close to 1,700 responses for students. And we asked a variety of different questions, and these were students from Burrell, Bayside, Abbott, and Bowditch. So we didn't survey kids who attend any of our elementary schools, because again, it's really a very different, just a different disciplinary safety school culture experience at a K-5 than it is at a middle school. And what we got back from those responses is some clarity from kids about how they felt about having police on campus, and answers like we said, would you be in favor of having police on campus? And 42% yes, said yes. 51% said it really depends. So we went a little bit deeper and we asked, what do you think would help your school feel more safe on campus if you had an opportunity to do something different next year? What might help us be more safe at school? One of the highest responses from our students were more efforts to really resolve conflicts when they occur, and more training for adults at school and how to calm students down. those were two very, very highly rated answers from students, which I think is very interesting and important for us to think about what our students are telling us. Another very highly rated response was more chances for students to build trust with other students, which is a very powerful statement as well. We did ask some more direct questions, such as, if you knew someone at your school was going to be hurt by someone else, to whom would you report it? 67% said their teacher, 50% said their principal, 40% said their counselor, and what we want to see moving forward is those numbers go way, way up and have our students feel more comfortable and work with them and feeling better about telling us when a potential safety issue is going to happen. We started to ask questions heading down the road of a potential memorandum of understanding that we would propose to the board in the upcoming months about school resource officer engagement. And we asked a question about how it would make students feel to have a police officer on campus. And about 700 said it would make me feel safer. And about 500 said it would make me feel nervous. So I think it's important for us to acknowledge that both feelings exist, that both things are there. So tonight's presentation is really an opportunity for the board to digest this, to think about this. We at the district level have compiled a year's worth of in the field experiences from our educators and from our administrators. We've done a lot of engagement with our local police departments, both Foster City and San Mateo, but we've also done a great deal of engagement with kids and with parents. One thing I will recommend to the board in the fall is that we memorialize an agreement. And what that agreement will say is based on these survey results, and it's based on our feedback from our educators, and it's based on engagement with our parents. But the sources of this data are before the board tonight and have been before the board in these very public sessions that we've had at the many schools that we've had them. So I wouldn't say that anything is necessarily groundbreaking or, earth shattering, but I think there's quite a bit of meat in here for us to talk about. And I want to pass it back over to the public and to the board to further discuss this, with the knowledge that as this district will be doing continued parent and student engagements, working as an administration with our staff to make some recommendations to this board in the months ahead about how to have a new written agreement with our law enforcement entities to really spell out exactly what relationship we feel is going to be best for students, and bring that to the board for your discussion, for your deliberation, for your feedback, for your guidance, and then down the road, hopefully have something agreed upon in the months ahead. And with that, President Proctor, I'll pass it back over to you.
Thank you very much. Are there any clarifying questions?
I'm wondering if we have access to this information in a way that disaggregated data around students from certain income levels. I think that would tell a really important story.
To respond to that, Trustee Corzo, we do have the data being disaggregated along ethnicity and along gender identity. Those were two of the components that we started with, and we'll be able, in our engagement with the board and our engagement with the public, to be able to give specific data along those lines.
but not income level?
Because it's self-reported, that one is a little bit harder to, because we're having students take the survey and report to us that information. So I would just worry it might not be quite as accurate.
I just have a follow-up to that. Did we not, I think when we talked about it before, it was going to be tied to like a student ID number so that we'd be able to pull all of that. Is that not how it ended up being administered?
We have it with their email account, so we could do a couple of, couple of steps down the road. At this point in time, what we've done is collected it and evaluated according to the responses that the students gave us. So with the board's request, we could actually take it down that road and align it to their information in the student system at the board's request.
The parent survey is the actual second survey. Do we have data from the first survey?
We don't have demographic data for that.
No, I mean, not demographic, but we only have the parent survey from the actual second survey that was done
the first
just
survey,
a few weeks ago.
Yeah, the first survey was presented to the board. I want to say at the beginning of May, when the title of that survey was listening session survey. So if you recall, the board had a series of listening sessions starting in January and going through the end of March, and the results of those listening sessions were brought to the board. But as you know, everything with the Uvalde that happened and the circumstances that happened at Burrell caused us to respond to parent feedback to say, if you survey parents again, you might get different results. So that was really what this was about. It's about being transparent and being responsive to that concern.
Yeah, no, I was just curious about whether or not we had, if the first survey was comparable to the second survey, because obviously of all that happened in between. So it would have been interesting to see what the data would look like, but no, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Peter, can we please go to public comment?
If there's any member of the public that would like to make comment on this item, please use the raise your hand functionality within Zoom now. Okay, Marcella, go ahead.
Thank you. I do want to express appreciation for the manner in which this information is being brought and shared with the community. There are a lot of really big issues and topics that are addressed here. I did have the same question that Trustee Chin had, in that the survey was 1 week after Uvalde. And I think that for some communities that can create, that can shape what kind of responses they may be giving in that moment. And that I think it's an important data, but I also think it's important to hear how people were feeling prior to that. It also looks like, and I just wanted confirmation that the second survey, the parent survey, it looked like it was employees and parents. And so that the actual number of parents was closer to like 145 or 144 parents, which is a really low N, I think, for kind of understanding what the current climate is or belief is within this space. And then the last thing I was thinking about is the Healthy Kids survey data. I know is incredibly powerful, and with just kind of overwhelming end of year, it could absolutely be something that that I have overlooked, that, you know, in a board meeting that I missed. But I'm very interested in knowing how the Healthy Kids survey data ties in with the survey data that these students, the information that they shared in this particular survey, and what we can pull from that. I appreciate all of the effort and energy that the district is putting into making our students feel like this is a safe space for them, because it just factually is not for so many students right now. And so all of this is, my hope is leading to a more positive climate where all students feel safe and feel heard. And I think that the surveys are a step towards that. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcella. Okay, President Proctor, there are no other hands for public comment.
Okay, thanks. Let's bring it back for board comments.
And President Proctor, if I could respond to Trustee Chin, but also to Marcella. We asked parents after those listening sessions the question to say specifically, how do you feel about, the question was, I am in favor of having police officers on school campuses. At the time, and this was the March 24th, 2022 meeting of the board, and anybody can go online and find this presentation. 25.2% of parents said on a daily or regular basis. When we asked that question again, the response was 50.7%, but these are not the same parents. There was not a one-to-one correlation between who responded to the first survey and who responded to the second survey. So I just think that's, you know, an important thing for us to look at. And as far as an administration, at a district level, our task is to take in all that information, to take in the Healthy Kids survey data, to take in the first parent survey data, second parent survey data, to try to make the most informed and effective recommendation to the board moving forward, and maybe just come up with a recommendation that leaves us all saying, this was a very good process. This was a really smart and thoughtful next step for our district.
Thank you, Superintendent Ochoa, for that clarification and those comments. I struggle with the thought that our survey numbers are really low in terms of the responses. And I do recognize that the survey in March is, I would concur that they're probably totally two different sets of parents, or maybe there's probably some overlap, but I think that there probably are different sets of parents who answered the survey a second time. So it gives me a little pause to think about this in terms of the survey results. However, I was thinking that this is really actually sort of middle school parents. And so when you think about it, you know, and thinking about, you know, 215 responses, I know like in my household, if I answer a survey, my wife wouldn't. And so, and vice versa. And so I feel like when we look at the total number of middle school families that we have, that when I think about 215 responses compared to our entire district, I think it's relatively small. But when you consider that 215 responses for maybe middle school families, I think that it's still small, but it's not, you know, as small. So I guess my question is did this actually go out specifically to middle school families, or was it to the entire district?
Sorry, it did go out to middle school families, the parents of middle school students.
I do appreciate the analysis, the survey, and the actual what'd you say? It's not a chart, but the comparison of the previous years. in terms of what kind of the discipline reports from the 1819, 1920. So I think that's very interesting to see that data, and to see actually also the classifications that we as a district enter in the discipline. So such as like alcohol or rough housing. I think it's interesting to see that, and knowing that we categorize different incidents in different ways. I still kind of struggle with the lower survey responses, but I can understand where we're going. And I appreciate you bringing this forward to us. And I feel like this is just, in some ways, just the beginning of this sort of conversation. And so I think this is a good first step for providing the data to us. So thank you.
So yeah, thank you for the update here in terms of kind of where we are. I definitely want to see, I think it's really hard to have the conversation without the disaggregated data, because there are so many implications around how different students are, what their experience is, which is kind of at the core of this conversation. And so I look forward to that information and being able to see those impacts. And, you know, I was just thinking a little bit, Trustee Chin, as you were talking about the numbers, and it makes me wonder a little bit about, like, is there, I know that there's been, you know, a ton going on this year, and there's lots of different priorities and all of that, but if, you know, this is something that we really want to hone in on, like, what does that really look like in terms of ensuring that we're getting more parent involvement? Like, what does that, like, on campus campaign look like? Are there QR codes that folks are scanning when they're picking, like, you know, all of the communication strategies that we've been employing in other ways, like, how do we do that for this to get those numbers up? And then, you know, the other thing it makes me think a little bit about is just like, what other factors do we want to consider in terms of the disaggregated data? And does it make sense to survey kids again, aligning it to some way that we're able to pull that information more easily? So, you know, race and ethnicity and gender are super important. SES status, as Trustee Corzo said, makes me think a little, when I look at some of the discipline statistics, it makes me think a little bit about, like, makes me think a little bit about, like, students that have had challenges and what that, you know, what that perspective is. And I just think that there's, like, a lot of intersectionalities here that should at least be on the table for discussion when we're thinking about how we move forward as a district. And so I'd be interested in knowing kind of, yeah, what we can do to kind of address some of those pieces, because I think that, I mean, should this be something that I think, like, my fellow board members are also interested in, like, really elevating and prioritizing as something that we're getting kind of the stakeholder engagement, et cetera, that we want? Or do we feel like we have enough information to think about making a decision? So those are just some of the things that I'm thinking a little bit about. I am, and I may have missed this in my transition. I know you were sharing a little bit about kind of bringing back MOUs with our police departments. Did you share what the timeline of that was and when we can expect to have that conversation? And then is the intention that we would bring back disaggregated data at that time? Like, I'm trying to get a sense of timeline, what you guys are currently thinking in terms of timeline and next steps, and when the ideal decision-making point is, and how all of these pieces fit together, because I think that also helps to make some decisions about, like, what we can and can't do.
I think, Trustee Watkins, to start at the end of your comments, I think for us a 90-day timeline to be able to bring the board a presentation at your August school board meeting that has the fully disaggregated data, that has the adjoined, all the grouped up combination of survey data, staff data, administrator feedback, parent engagement feedback, and some initial engagement with both Foster City PD and San Mateo PD to sit down and just talk about our work together in 22, 23, because one of the critical pieces for us is we do actually engage with both police departments, but we don't have an agreed upon memorandum of understanding that spells out exactly what that engagement is. And as you know, as a board, we visited school sites and were surprised to see programs taking place and wanting to know what the structure was for those programs to happen, how they were being approved, when they were taking place, at how many schools. We said, well, that's just one component of this. But it's also very predicated on the board's deliberation. So the board might start to get this information in August from us and say, we want another 90 days, or we want to see what our data looks like at the end of first semester with our restorative practices and with our new PD and administrative approach. But on the administrative side, we would look at this as a minimum of a 90-day process from now moving forward, to be able to make a recommendation to the board.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I was going to say that thank you for sharing all this information. Like the more I think about this and a lot of the decisions we're making for middle schoolers, the more I want to elevate the student voice. And when I read the question, I'm in favor of having police officers on the school campuses, and the majority says depends, it makes me want to say depends on what. And I know there's more information below, but I don't know, maybe this is a crazy idea, but I've really found value in the board community workshops, and I'm wondering if there's any opportunities where we could hear directly from students, just because I think there's more stories out there, there's more information, like things that I thought maybe, when I look at some of these questions, they don't want more lessons on how to be kind. They want to be treated like people. They want to be able to learn how to resolve conflicts, and they want to be able to, they want a wellness center, and they want, it seems like more chances to build trust. These are all these are not things that you just say, here's a class, or here's a book, or here's a program, just do this. These are they want to be treated like adults, and I think their voice is important. And so, and more training for adults on how to calm students down. So it's just it's an interesting, I'm glad these questions were asked, and I'm glad that we are seeing these responses, because it just makes me think they kind of want to take ownership of their own destiny, I guess. And when they say things like, it would, I believe having a police officer on campus all the time or regularly is a good thing, it makes me want to say well, how do you envision that? What are you thinking it would be like? Because we're not going to have a police officer 24/7 on every middle school campus. That's just, I don't think that's not what we had before, and I don't think that's where we're going. But I'd love to hear more about what they think. And also in terms of, I think one of the questions was basically, I thought it was on this one, who they would feel comfortable going to talk to when something's happening. Well, things happened and nobody said anything at some of our campuses. Some situations happen and kids are not coming forward and saying what they know. And so there's just more, I think, more to the story, and I'd love to hear more about it. I think surveys are great, but it kind of leaves us to almost trying to interpret what do they mean, especially when like the strongest answer is neutral. It's hard to make decisions that way. So anyways, those are my thoughts. It's just like, it makes me want to hear more from students and really elevate their voices and give them a chance to be heard. But thank you for this. Look forward to continuing to engage on this.
I'll keep it short and sweet. I think it's really, like, I just want to just name that I'm really glad that we're sending these surveys out, right? Like, this is information that we didn't have previously. And I agree with a lot of what Allison said. I do want to see the disaggregated data. I think that's also like a foundational piece of this. And, we just also approved of, like Yonder and cell phone free campuses. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. And, like having these kinds of conversations with like in a board and community workshop, I think is a good idea, but also like, it's kind of like a really passionate topic for people. So we'd just have to be mindful of that. But this is also making me realize that we really, like, there are other districts. And I think this was a topic that was brought up at the San Mateo County School Board's School Board Association retreat. Like, there's a lot of districts moving towards having student board members. And I think this is one of those times where that would be really, really valuable. So I just want to name that, and I will request it in a little bit. But I'm glad that we're having this conversation, and I'm also interested to see like how folks would feel in a couple of months because of the timing with just tragedies that are happening in our country. And I also want to name that, like, I don't know that it's like super like commonly known, but in Uvalde specifically, like there actually was a school resource officer on that campus, right? And their Moms Demand Action is an organization that I mean, like what last board meeting, we also passed a resolution kind of lifting up like some actions that we would take to get families in our community to have conversations around safety in their own homes and like just kind of like another piece of the school safety puzzle. But at the end of the day, I feel really confident that the no cell phone policy will create improvement. And so, yeah, I'm just interested to see how things kind of shake out in a couple of months. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the data. I look forward to seeing more of it. That wasn't short. Sorry about that.
Any other comments on this item? Okay. We will move on to item 10, board member statements and requests for future agenda items.
No one wants to go. I wanted to share that as we are wrapping up our last board meeting of what I would say of our school year, and we will go back to what had before the pandemic, our July break, and come back in August. I wanted to share that I have said before on this dais many times that I feel like one of the best things about being a trustee is being able to go visit the schools and seeing the teachers in action and the kids smiling, and those school site visits are grounding and rewarding in terms of reinforcing of why we do this stuff. But as
Principal Jessica Noddy had said at the very beginning, Trustee Corzo and I had the opportunity to go up and shake all like 300 or so students at Burrell's graduation. And that was, after everything that we've been through this year and through the pandemic, knowing that most of those actually all those eighth graders really were only in middle school on campus for like a year and a quarter, maybe year and a half. It was a really rewarding experience. Seeing all the students and shaking their hands, seeing the nervousness, seeing the pure joy of their graduation, seeing the parents all happy. And so I just wanted to share that, and I hopefully we'll bring this into our sort of July break as we think about, taking a break for ourselves as well. And I hope everybody else is taking a break as well, if they can. So thank you.
I was going to also talk about the graduations and how that was just such a rewarding experience. I made it to 3 out of the 4 middle school graduations, and they were all unique and different and really inspiring. And I also got to chaperone the Bowditch 8th grade party / dance, and that was like even more fun to watch because it was just like kids having a blast before they head off to summer and then off to high school. And it was really emotional at the end, but it was just so nice to see kids having a great safe time, dancing to songs that I feel like I knew back when I was younger. I didn't know how they knew them all, but that's okay. But just it was really a great way to end the school year. And so ending tonight's meeting, I am also looking forward to taking a break, and I hope everybody gets a chance to relax and re-energize for the fall.
Thank you to everyone for, such hard work this year and a really successful year with a lot of progress in so many different areas. And yes, well-deserved summer break ahead, and looking forward to digging back in August.
Yeah, ditto to that. I wish I could have made it to all of the graduations. It was a beautiful experience to be a part of, and I mean, it was amazing. I'm laughing because like some of the kids look like so young and some of them look so grown, and it's crazy because like that happens in middle school, right? And even high school, like you see, and just like to see every student's like unique style and like different folks have like kind of like cultural norms that they have when someone in their family graduates, and it was beautiful to see. And it's always amazing to see like our community come together and celebrate all of our kids. So I'm really glad that I got to be a part of that. And I wish all of our graduates success in high school and in life, right? I think it's amazing that we got to be a part of it in some way. And with that, I want to request that we have a student, or I want to put sorry. Now you're right, Ken. Earlier you weren't. I want to request that we put a student trustee or trustees on the agenda in the future. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Okay. Item 11, our future meeting dates, so August 4th and August 18th. So we will add those to our calendar. And we're at item 12.1, adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Watkins for the motion and Trustee Chin for the second. We'll go to roll call. Trustee Watkins.
Yes.
Trustee Corzo.
Yes.
Trustee Chin.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. We are adjourned at 9:47 p.m. Thank you.